streaming now. Let's see. Pardon me. Streaming now. Let's see. Oop. I have this open over here. Alright. Hello everyone. So, this is the current dilemma we're facing. I wasn't able to access Discord in my browser to get ad block. By the way, I'm joined here with Galazar of Ask ANCAP fame. So I wasn't able to access Discord in my browser to get the ad block. So I'm doing it on the Discord client. But then now it's giving me ads. Even when Ask ANCAP is hosting, I'm getting ads. So the question is, are we cool with ads? Or do we have to like find out some way to like, for me to like download this video and like screen share it with VLC? I decided to go live just to get the wisdom of the crowds here. Like, what are we thinking? Let me be your stream technician. I mean, Vancord has built-in ad block, easy script install. Was it easy NixOS install? If it's easy NixOS install, then I can do that. Get Vancord, people are saying. Okay. I suppose whilst I research this, do you want to introduce yourself to the fine people?
Hello, yeah, absolutely. This is Galazar. This is the personal account at the back end of the Ask ANCAP call-in show. So I'm really excited. I found this video, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, maybe, whenever it came out, and I was just so excited to share it with everybody because I think I actually had a stroke watching it. So I think we're going to have a good time going through it. And just for the record too, Zula, I don't know if I should have mentioned this earlier, I do have a downloaded copy of the video, if you want to just run it that way. I just wasn't sure if playing it locally like that was going to be convenient to, you know, keep it, stay on the same page or whatever.
I suppose, you know, it does seem like Vancord is pretty easy for me to install. So I'm going to try Vancord, and if all goes well, then... Or if all doesn't go well, then I suppose we'll have to just see if you can like screen share and if I can still get audio from your screen share. Pardon me.
Sure,
okay.
Yeah, that works for me. Will that entail you're just gonna have to restart Discord then, I assume?
Yeah. Let's rebuild, like, rebuild switch. Like is there, okay. Okay, I will have to leave Discord if I'm going to move over to Vancord, so I'll talk to you in a...
Okay, understood. See you then.
Close. Close! Close the fucking thing. Close! Why is this happening to me? Okay, bring up the fucking system monitor. Processes. Hello there, Mr. Discord Rat.
Your internet dropping mid-trade. It's already stressful enough.
End process. Send signal. Kill. Kill. They kill. Kill you. Bye. And hopefully this doesn't fuck up the stream, me trying to... Oh, it does fuck up the... or maybe not. Yeah, hopefully I'm able to actually rebuild my system whilst streaming. Anyway, let's, I might as well go over some of the super chats whilst I wait for this to finish. Activity. So there's a heterodox agnostic 8070 for 20 Crooner. Thank you very much. So I hope you're doing great. I am indeed. Everything was resolved. And there's a Doge B7X for 6 something. Thank you very much. They're saying Zal Zulu. Indeed. And then Heterodox Agnostic 8070 for another 20 kroner, thank you very much. Saying Vencourt has built-in ad block, so yeah. What we're gonna try here. That work? But okay. Broken. Time to go over why that's failing. I'm just gonna have to roll with it. For Linux, you want Vesktop, which is a wrapper on Vencourt with better Linux support. Okay. I'm just gonna have to. It wouldn't be a Zulu stream without a million technical difficulties. For $5 Canadian, thank you very much. It's not. It's not. It's always to do with like fucking Discord. I swear to God. Like when I'm just streaming on my own, it's fine. Now Discord is not detecting any input from my mic. Are you guys detecting input from my mic? Yeah, it looks like you are. So what the fuck? Mic test. Testing. What the fuck? Literally, what the Now Discord is broken. Error 3002. Testing. Testing. My God. Okay. Yeah, let's try access Discord on Chromium as another browser. Just throw a million browsers at this thing. Log in. I goddamn know Chrome is my default browser, and nothing is going to ever change. Change to Windows, little bro. Do you know how many problems I had on Windows? Way, way more. I don't think you understand just how bloated and awful Windows is. Okay, let's I might as well whilst I'm at this. Oh, what about it? Bother. Our voice call, let's see if that works. Go. Annoying noise.
Hello.
Hello. Okay, so I would say just see if you can screen share it with like your downloaded copy or something, and hopefully we can still get audio from that.
All right, copy that. Just give me 1 second here. I'm going to see if I can just get that set up right quick.
Cool. Huge Harold for $5. Watch the video when it came out. It's pretty low-hanging fruit. Strokes definitely inbound. Yeah, and I remember skimming it a little bit, and I don't recall him making a single cogent argument.
I got to be honest. I totally think that it's guilty as charged on calling it low-hanging fruit. I totally think that that's accurate. But he's got pretty good viewership, and that justifies it, I think, and it's going to be fun. So,
Yep.
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember where I put it, if I'm being honest. It's been a little while since I was planning on using it. That's all.
Jesus. Hello, what did I miss? Nothing so far. I just went live to try and... I couldn't keep people waiting much longer for most of the reason. Yeah, we're just trying to figure out the best way to screen share this. Yeah, no, like, tomorrow I'm going to find, like, the best screen share solution where I can just, like, fucking self-host it and not have to worry about all this bullshit. And it just works.
All right, we're nearly there. I'm going to just download it again instead of spending any more time, but it's a quick download, so we'll be all right.
I mean, to be fair, if you go to, like, a fucking... Apparently this is what all the fucking streamers do. They just kind of dawdle for, like, the first half an hour of the stream. That's supposed to be what a streamer does. I guess I'm not built like most streamers. I just want to start the thing and then get into it, you know.
Sure. I wish we were dawdling. That would maybe be a little bit more comfortable for us.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Got the video here. I'm going to see about screen sharing.
Why don't you let the other person watch it in their browser with adblock, and you watch their screen share through Discord? I suppose that would also work. That's what we just need, some way for it to be watchable for me whilst it's still got the audio without any of those confounded advertisements.
Well, as long as they don't mind, are you seeing this, the full screen VLC?
Yes, I am.
All right, so I'm going to just run it right quick, make sure the audio is good, and then we will... Welcome
back to JimmyTalks. So let's talk about libertarianism a little bit.
All right, then. I think we're good to go, unless I see something in the in your live chat saying that the audio is not good. I think we can probably run with that.
Huzzah.
Did you guys hear that?
I mean, if they don't hear
Jimmy's
it, it's on my end, so I can just bump the stream volume.
Gotcha. All right, then. Let's get started.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to JimmyTalks. So let's talk about libertarianism a little bit. On the surface, it sounds appealing, everything that they say, because they're talking about freedom and the Constitution, and taxation is theft, and everybody hates the IRS.
Right
every time taxes, that kind of...
It's curious that the way he introduced that, it's like, oh, libertarianism on the surface, it sounds good because they're talking about, like, the Constitution was one of the things they mentioned. Like, no, libertarians, we are not constitutionalists. What this person has heard is people calling themselves libertarians, but who don't actually believe in the philosophy of libertarianism. Because nowhere in the philosophy of libertarianism, which we get from Meyer Rothbard, does it say anything about, therefore the Constitution is correct, or because of the Constitution, therefore this. The Constitution is not an axiom, it's not an ethical philosophy, it's not a legal philosophy, it's none of those things. The Constitution is fundamentally just a bunch of guys got together and made a document and said, here's what you got to do. That doesn't bind to anything. It's nonsense.
Exactly, and I think that that's a great place to start, because what we're going to see here over the next maybe 30 seconds before he makes any or attempts any concrete criticisms is probably one of the worst examples of poisoning the well that I've ever seen. Just starting out the conversation by saying, all right, well, we're going to talk about this other person today, just so you know they're evil and corrupt, and they're actually only making their arguments because they hate prosperity. So here, let's just see how he decided to do that.
Time in the season comes around, I fucking hate it. And I think everybody can also agree that the federal government is very bloated and it's just strangling this country. But when you actually look at libertarianism, we don't find allies as right-wingers. It's kind of just as destructive to the American nation and the Christian faith and our European heritage as anything coming out of the progressive left. In fact, in many ways, libertarians are just the useful idiots for the liberal regime. They are wolves in sheep's clothing who open the gates for the very tyranny that they claim to oppose, and I will tell you why. And before I even start...
I do want to comment on this. I think I know the exact person he's getting these arguments from. I think he watched Andrew Wilson versus Dave Smith and just kind of jotted down Andrew Wilson's opening statement and went, yeah, we'll just run with that. Which, if my suspicions are correct, because this is basically exactly Andrew Wilson's argument, that libertarians in fact open the door to the very tyranny that we're supposed to oppose, yada yada yada, whatever. If my suspicions are correct, then this is a, well, like 30, 45,000 view video or whatever, which is completely not understanding libertarianism, thanks to good old Dave Smith. Dave Smith was not capable of disabusing anybody of their false notions of libertarianism in that debate, and people have walked away from that debate without knowing what libertarianism actually entails. And I have a very strong suspicion, because I don't think Mr. JimmyTalks is particularly impressive enough to come up with any arguments on his own, so I reckon that's probably where he gets that argument from.
It must be pretty frustrating and vindicating for you at the same time, because I think what you've been saying for so long is that the particular style of promoting libertarianism that Dave Smith pursues is having this harmful consequence of giving people the wrong idea about what it is in the first place. And here, for you, it's almost like you can genealogically see how his form of promoting libertarianism is just infecting people with these misconceptions.
Mm-hmm.
So there's actually two other things about there that I didn't pause it, but just I want to point out I think they're kind of interesting as well. One, he was talking about how libertarians aren't allies to right-wingers, and I mean that statement in itself really depends on what you mean when you say right-wingers and what you mean when you say libertarians. I think people like Mentis Wave will probably, like, he would say he's right libertarian. But I think it does kind of invoke a really interesting question, because when I talk about political alignment, I try to give people the impression that, for the most part, just relative to how people are using the words left and right today, that libertarianism is equally distant in all the important ways from the left and the right. It should be seen as its own separate thing rather than a component of either. And do you sort of talk about it the same way?
Yeah, well, so the way I look at the left versus right wing is basically as, like, very vague alliances. Now, on different topics, you might ally in different ways. The really dangerous thing, and then, this is why, Murray Rothbard at certain points, he was allying with the left-wingers, other points with the right-wingers. I think that's entirely proper if you've got an actual political philosophy to do that type of thing. Because these are strategic alliances fundamentally, so it depends on what strategic situation you're in, who you should align yourself with. Now, what becomes really dangerous is when people turn left-wing or right-wing into their ideology. That's when you get leftism and rightism, where you just have total culture war-obsessed morons who have no philosophy. It's just a grab bag of, my tribe's supposed to believe in these things. They take the strategic alliance as the primary, right? They just take that as their philosophy, and then you just get cult mentalities. That's how you get the Trump phenomenon. That's how you get leftists, right? That's how these things come about. So in that sense, yeah, libertarianism is effectively equidistant from the two of them. I think, at least for the past little bit now, libertarianism has been far better to be aligning with the right wing than the left wing. But certainly not if that entails, the Dave Smith crowd, if that entails the Mises Caucus, because they've taken that and they've just become rightists, effectively.
Sure. I think that's a really good way of looking at it. And actually, I confess I haven't really been thinking about it in exactly those terms. So I do like treating those words that way, that they're political alliances. One other comment I think is worth drawing attention to here that is a really interesting misunderstanding of libertarianism. This is definitely something that drives me up the wall, is that we're wolves in sheep clothing, but we're also useful idiots. And what he supposes that we're useful idiots for promoting is what he sees as the liberal agenda. And I think we're going to have to make some assumptions here, but he's identifying as on the right. So is the liberals the Democrats, for example? Is that just the left? And if so, what possible way is what the libertarians are promoting assisting a doctrine and a paradigm of government taxation and expenses?
Yeah,
I think sorry.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's like, does any more even need to be said on that? Like, every possible thing they are diametrically opposed to us on. Like, they want the welfare state, you know?
Yeah, it's one of those things that as soon as I think maybe this is the point when I was watching this video that I immediately said I got to talk to somebody about this, because I started sweating. All right, so I'll start playing again. Maybe he'll explain himself and make this a little bit more palatable.
There's like 10% of libertarians that I like. The other 90% are just libtards in disguise. But anyways, the fundamental problem with libertarianism is that it treats human beings like interchangeable economic units.
I want to pause it right there. What do you think, Zulu? Are we do we treat human beings as or however he phrased that, as economic units?
Yeah, no. No. So this is, he seems to be going for a bit of actually a grab bag approach here, where he's kind of taken the Andrew Wilson argument and then just kind of doesn't have any philosophy to back it up, I guess. And so he just goes for another talking point, which is like, they just treat it as homo economicus or whatever it's called, right? Like, libertarianism has nothing to do with economics in the first case. Like, libertarianism isn't an economic theory, which is, confusing to people perhaps, because pretty much every single libertarian is also an Austrian economist, or they agree with Austrian economics, I should say, because they go hand in hand quite well. But like, libertarianism itself is just a stance on what the law is. It's just saying what people's rights are. So, and in that sense, like, I suppose there's a sense in which, law is blind. Everybody is of the same kind, mankind, so they have the same rights in that respect. So in that sense, they're interchangeable, but not in the sense that he wants to kind of get across here, which I'm assuming here is just like, well, no, but people aren't interchangeable. Some people are more important. Some people, obviously, yeah, we identify some people as criminals in the first case, some people as non-criminals. That's all libertarianism does. And he doesn't even say that you can't then go above that and say that you should love your wife more than the random bum down the road, or you should only value people in terms of how much money they can make you. Like, libertarianism just doesn't speak on that issue. I think he's just not clear on what libertarianism actually claims, or what area it's even in, right? What area the claims it makes are even in, let alone what specifically it claims.
It's interesting for me to think about this, the extent of the misunderstanding here. And I asked myself, by the end of this video, I wonder if we can make a verdict on whether or not these are the kinds of misunderstandings where if we just had the opportunity to sit down with them and explain, maybe, you think we're saying this, but nobody's saying that. Like, this is what really is being said, and disabuse him of this straw man that he's suffering from. If it would result in him just sort of doubling down, is that the kind of person that we're dealing with here? Or perhaps it would make a really positive difference for him in maybe understanding better what libertarianism is, even if he doesn't end up ultimately agreeing with it.
Well, I mean, I don't know anything about this guy in particular, so I could only ever speculate, but I have very little confidence in any person that I can just, like, quite early on I find, any libertarian, they're like, oh, well, if I just explain this to people, then they'll get it. but I was disabused of that quite early on. Like, I think vast majority of people are dishonest and, like, they don't even want to, like, see the truth of libertarianism. So I'm really skeptical that that could work.
Sure. Well, I'll disabuse myself then of the optimism, and we'll just have to see how far down the pit he'll take us.
Yeah.
Rather than spiritual beings with a culture and a history and a nature that.
Now, just to be clear, what he's saying there to finish his thought, that because we sort of got in the middle of the sentence, he just listed off a bunch of things that are not true of libertarians. Now,
Yeah.
I think Zulu and I are both atheists, but there's some adjectives in there I think most libertarians might think, maybe we can still have those things and be libertarians.
Yeah, because he's saying that libertarianism just treats people as interchangeable economic units, as against people who have like a culture of religion or whatever, or so on and so forth. They got a yabba dabba do and a yabba dabba dee. Libertarianism doesn't care about any of that. It does, like, that's outside the claim. It's like, oh well, physicists, they just treat people as like a collection of forces and so on and so forth, rather than somebody who feels love. Like, okay, great, you feel love. That's outside the realm of what the physicist is studying. Like, it does not matter. Like, different fields of study have their own certain domain. I don't want the mathematician to be talking about fear. Like, that's outside his domain. I don't want the biologist to be telling me about the composition of the sun. That's outside his domain. Right? Each thing has its own domain. So that libertarianism doesn't have a comment on it doesn't mean that we think there is nothing more. That's not the claim at all, right? This is strictly a legal position. For instance, I have a certain theory of art, what art is, what the correct way to evaluate an art piece is. Now, this doesn't imply that I don't also have a position on what the speed of light is. Even though my aesthetics, it doesn't actually comment at all on what the speed of light is, it doesn't mean that I can't have a position on both. Right? I can have different positions in different areas, and I know how to properly bracket off these different domains.
Yeah, I think the nature of this criticism at sort of a structural level, it really reminds me of when you get into like a young earth creationist debate, and you'll hear sometimes an argument get made, well, it's like, well, the other side, the evolutionists believe that we came from monkeys, as if there's some sort of objectionable way in which they don't like the reductionism, and because they don't like the straw man reductionism, that invalidates the other position. And I feel like functionally that the same thing that's happening here. All right, I'll let him continue.
I will say the correct response to a creationist saying that, if anybody's interested, is to say, like, no, I'm not saying we came from monkeys. I'm saying we are monkeys, to just really rile them up. Because if you have a monophyletic group, which is the only proper way to construct these things, then humans are monkeys, and humans actually are bony fish. We are fish. So that can really rile them up if you do it right.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. You're not. There won't be any conversions happening once they realize that you're asking them to literally become fish by accepting your position. That's a hard pill for them to swallow.
It requires order. So I'm pretty much going to be attacking libertarianism, and I fully expect to get some heat for this, but it is what it is. So I think that libertarians, a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them, operate on this childish notion that liberty is the only value that matters.
What do you think, Zulu? Are you operating on the childish notion that liberty is the only value that matters?
Yeah, I guess I am. Like, he's got me, right? I just have... When I say that law is a subset of ethics, I mean that it's the whole of ethics. Like, no, clearly not. Like, libertarianism, again, is a legal theory. Okay, that doesn't mean that you can't have any ethics outside of law. It's saying that that ethics is not part of libertarianism. That's a different domain. That's a different position. Just like how you might have a position on abortion, right? But that doesn't mean you don't have positions on anything else. It means that you're pro-lifers. It's like, oh, pro-lifers, they act like everything is just about whether or not a woman should be able to get to abort her baby. That's the pro-lifers act like that's all that matters. That there's no values outside of keeping a baby alive. Like, no, they don't act like that. They're like, that is the pro-life coalition. It's specifically on that one particular issue, and it doesn't extend outside of its own domain.
But I'm going to be totally honest with you. Letting people do whatever they want is not civilization. It's really stupid.
We know what the two alternatives are. You've got civilization and the inversion just being totally stupid. I feel like what we might have walked into here is sort of like a barbed wire filled no man's land of somebody who's struggling to they're struggling to avoid stepping in and out of economical topics, ethical topics, legal topics. And I sort of get the sense here with the words he's using, like civilization, letting people do what they want. You know, he's going to soon be talking about the use of drugs, and he's going to oppose the use of drugs on ethical grounds, right? But when he's talking about civilization, he's going to accidentally slip into production efficiency and like coherent legal systems. And I think that it's sort of, I don't want to come across too strong, but it almost makes me feel pity, because it must be very uncomfortable to be switching between those very distinct topics and not realize that you're doing it.
Yeah, it's almost like that old Bastiat line about how people act like because he thinks that the government shouldn't do something, that therefore it shouldn't be done at all. Like, no, this is, the fact that this is an error stretching so far back among the socialists, the fucking Bastiat was able to point out, like, well, just because I don't think that the government should produce grain doesn't mean I don't think that grain should be produced. And in fact, back in his day, this was so early on in what socialists were, that he used it as a reductio ad absurdum against socialism. It's like, okay, well, if you take your beliefs to the fullest, then government should even produce the food. Like, isn't this so crazy? And little did he know, a short while later, the Soviet Union would be doing that very thing. So, like, it goes to show that, like, it's not, untoward in any way to point out what the logical conclusion of somebody's premises are. Even if they're not taking the train all the way down to the final station there, pardon me, it will go there, right? Whether they want it or not, if they're pushing that philosophy. Because people are just going to get more and more consistent in that philosophy as time goes on. And then that's how you end up with the Soviet Union.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I mean, and I think this is maybe a more microcosmic relative to the size of the Soviet Union and the extent of the Soviet Union. But I remember I heard yesterday, I was in part of a conversation where they were saying that Pol Pot had all of the cooking implements seized. So that not only was it the case that the state had come into control of the food production, but they actually seized all of the property and capital that could even give the opportunity to produce food on your own. So it's truly the case that there's no limits to how far some people will take that line of reasoning, even if I think sort of our democratic compatriots here in the more nearby regions are hesitant to go that far.
But don't worry, they will never take your toothbrush, so at least you can have that after everything else is stripped from you. You'll still have your toothbrush according to, 15-year-old Marxists online.
Right, until the first time somebody misses work because of a tooth problem, and then it's going to be like a paradigm shift.
Liberty without morality is just degeneracy. And that is the key facet that libertarians fail to grasp. When this country started, we had immense freedom. We had so much. We had liberty. But at the same time, 99% of the population was Christian. The cultural baseline was a shared European heritage with a shared moral framework. The founding fathers didn't create a government for a chaotic, atomized mob of atheistic consumers.
Sorry, I have to pause it there. A atomistic mob. This is one of the things I find the most interesting about not understanding the libertarian position is that what is prescribed. I mean, like you said before, libertarianism is a legal position, and the free market is a natural downstream from that position. But the free market is such a pro-social. Every aspect of it is talking about the enhancement and the proliferation of social interactions, not only in their frequency, but also in the way that they are becoming more and more pro-social. And in this case, pro-social is just meant to mean mutually beneficial instead of, as Rothbard would call it, hegemonic, where one side is only benefiting at the cost of the other. So it's such a strange position to find yourself in, to be advocating for such a pro-social system and be accused of atomism, as if what we're saying is either that we want or that we're going to cause as a secondary effect the separation of people, as if that's what's in their best interest and that's what people are pursuing.
Yeah, like, completely correct. And like, really, all libertarianism is claiming, in a certain sense, is that the precondition for you to have peace, for you to have cooperation, for you to have civilization, is non-aggression. And that is the precondition for you to have those things. Now, there might be other things you need to do in order to achieve that, but if you don't have the non-aggression principle as your baseline for cooperation, then you cannot have any of those things. The second you introduce aggression, where one side is just beating the other into submission, to whatever extent you have that, you do not have civilization. You You have brute force, and then then is that not truly the atomized individuals? Like, imagine a true world of atomized individuals was going to be just everybody going around and taking what they want from the other guy and beating whoever they want over the head. Like, because this is just a buzzword people love to use, because we don't want the government to come in and force everybody to play nice in the playpen or whatever, right? But the real world of atomized individuals, that is everybody just might makes right. That is the law of the jungle. Is the world of atomized individuals, and we're saying that we're trying to get away from that, right? And we want civilization. And in order to have civilization, which presumably Jimmy also wants civilization, you need to have the non-aggression principle in the first place, or else you just can't have it.
And on top of that, too, I think what we're about to see here when I unpause it, because he's already started this, is he wants to integrate some sort of, I'm not trying to stick this label on him, but it's striking me as like a Christian form of nationalism. And it's really interesting to me because in our libertarian movement, even in the ANCAP movement, we have like atheists, like both of you and I are, but we have lots of close associates who are on the other end of the theistic spectrum, let's say. And what I'm hearing here is he's saying, because you're not a Christian, you're not the type of person who can be trusted with freedom. And so, whereas what we're advocating for is something that I think demonstrably brings about good neighborliness between atheists and Christians and whatever other religious denominations are present, he's actively, if I'm understanding him correctly, saying that, like, based on his Christian position, he's under the impression that non-Christians need to be understood as people who can't be permitted to exist under conditions of freedom. Are you getting the same impression?
Yeah, because this is again like the Andrew Wilson sort of position you can see him advocate for, where, well, different sorts of people, they might be able to live peacefully among themselves, but it's entirely possible and perhaps even beneficial for them to dominate other groups of people. But we all saw how well that played out in Andrew Wilson's recent debate with Divinity, where he was completely torn to shreds in every level. It's really just a false premise that you have some sort of polylogism, that you have, he's basically confusing the group with the kind, right? He's confusing this group of humans where we have some principle within the group, but that's not what principle means. Principle has to apply to the kind. I man qua man as such, given his nature, right? That's really, and when you start thinking principled in that way, all of this breaks down, right? You can indeed have cooperation. It's beneficial for you to have cooperation with people you disagree with. That is beneficial to you, and so you should want to have that.
Like, get excited for the next product so I can consume. John Adams also said this very plainly. Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. Hey, come on. He said it himself. But libertarians read the Constitution like it's a
Well,
Is he under
what
the
the hell?
impression that
What are we going to do?
Like,
John Adams said it. I guess, given our holy text is John Adams' work, then I guess what else can we say at this point?
it seems to me as well, like not only is he making like just a wholly inadequate sort of appeal to, I guess you'd say it like a appeal to authority, but is he under the impression that the society that obtained during the American Revolution, obviously we have a lot of positive things to say about that time period, elements of that time period, but is he under the impression that the society that was present then is our end goal, that that's the perfect implementation of our principles that we're aiming for? Because it seems to be the case that he thinks that something that was true of that society renders some sort of impactful critique of what we're advocating for now. And I find that sort of strange. Am I under the wrong impression here? Did the American Revolution actually bring about Ancapistan for a time? I didn't think so.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is, again, you called out at the beginning, poisoning the well. It's, libertarianism. It sounds so good because they love the Constitution. But, whoa, snuck that premise. Because he's sneaking it by as like, we're going to compliment libertarians a little bit here because they love the Constitution. It's like, hang on, slow down. And that's not a compliment. That's a misrepresentation, which he's now using later on in the video to attack it. It's like, see, we all agreed that you love the Constitution so much earlier in the video. But yet, the Constitution is completely disagreeing with you guys. So what's up with that? You guys are in contradiction, therefore I win. Like, no. I challenge that initial premise. I do not agree with the Constitution. Lysander Spooner, a great hero among libertarians, he's done a lot of work on how the Constitution is completely illegitimate. Look up Lysander Spooner's No Treason if you want to know more about that.
suicide pact. They ignore the moral and religious part and just focus on the freedom part. But you cannot have one without the other. If you give absolute freedom to a population that has no moral compass, you do not get a free society. You get an insane jungle.
I'm interested in this phrasing. If you give absolute freedom, like, you see the way he's framing that. He's framing it as there's already this some ruler above who just gets to decide, and they grant freedom to people. That's the very opposite of freedom. All right. Pardon me. What we're saying is the precondition for you to have that moral society, for you to have this peaceful, cooperative society, is for people to be free. That's the precondition for flourishing itself. Right? If you want to have human flourishing, how do you get that human flourishing? That means people are obtaining their values. How do they do that? They've got to be free. Right? They've got to be free to produce those values, which they can then reap the rewards of. Right? Production requires freedom, and production is the prerequisite for a flourishing society. Right? It's really that simple. And these guys just do not understand that. Like, it's not that you need to have, not that religion and freedom are like, you got to have the two go together. It's like, no. If you want to have any sort of moral world, you've got to be free to judge religion yourself. Right? That's one thing you have to be free to judge on your own. Right? Or else force can't actually get people convinced of religion even. Right? You're not if I just go up to Ask ANCAP here, I just put a gun to his head and say, believe that 2 + 2 is 5, it doesn't matter how goddamn much he wants to believe that 2 + 2 = 5. He's not going to ever believe that. Right? That's not convincing him of that. All I could ever do there is turn off his thinking, not cause him to think in the ways that I want him to think. right? And this thought is the prerequisite for flourishing again.
Let me take the devil's advocate position here a little bit and sort of extrapolate what I think he's. And maybe I'm giving him too much credit here. I'll leave it up to the viewers if that's what I'm doing. But if we think about it in terms of time preference, for example, we could invent a hypothetical society where the members of that society are such high time preference that they will immediately, like, just they can't help themselves. They're murderers, and all kinds of other offenses would just be the only activities that they would behave in. And that if you were to somehow have an external force that added an additional incentive, like the threat of violence or something to them, that might delay their desire for instant gratification sufficient that they might be able to behave in something of a more orderly way. And I think that there's two things I would want to say to that if that were the case. And one is the ethical argument is unaffected by that even still, because obviously we're sort of taking the a priori position of here of what's right and wrong. We couldn't find it convincing in the slightest that you can justify aggression because you're satisfied with the outcome you get from the aggression. But also, I mean, even if we can say that there are certain aspects of our society that presently have greater time, like desire for instant gratification now, I think that the hypothetical requires that you take it to such an extreme that it's very hard to imagine that you could ever apply it to a real world situation where the concern he's having is applicable. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I think I have 2 points on that type of devil's advocate response. Is like where we just need this external force which can come in and like tame the brutish masses. Like first, this is kind of like a Hobbesian argument. If these masses are so brutish, what would make this external force be any less brutish? Like, how would you get an external force, a state, that is, which is going to be, holy, I suppose, and is going to try and tame the brutishness of man, right? Maybe you do have some angels in society who come together and they want to start this organization to do that. How would they overcome the vast majority of brutes? How would they do that? They're not going to be able to do that. Then you're just going to... No ideology can overcome this situation. For any ideology to be realized, it needs the majority of people, or at least some sufficient quantity of people, to agree with it, or at least not want to actively oppose their prescriptions, right? That's true of any ideology. But as a second point, if you do implement this state, and this is a point Hopper makes in Democracy of the God That Fails, the state necessarily makes time preferences even higher, right? Why is this? Because if you think about it, how does the state fund itself? Well, it's going to have to expropriate some wealth from people, right? So where did that wealth come from? Well, it came from either production, homesteading, or trade. So the state, in its expropriation, it places a relatively higher opportunity cost on doing those laborious activities, right, of production, homesteading, and trade. So you're going to get relatively less of those things and more leisure, right? But what is leisure against leisure? That is the very mark of high time preference. So you're shifting away from low time preference activities into high time preference activities, into immediate consumption. If you take the reduction case of, like, the Soviet Union, where any amount of savings I have, it's going to be expropriated from me. Whenever I get anything, I'm going to want to consume that immediately, because I know it's just going to go away the next day and I can't do any saving, right? So if you're really concerned about this society of high time preference brutes, introducing a state can only make that situation even worse by heightening their time preference even more.
Yeah, I think that's a tremendously interesting analysis. I could go down the rabbit hole of the sort of praxeological analysis there all day long, but I better not. But for anyone who's wondering, I was just playing the devil's advocate there. So yeah. Let's go on and let the devil advocate for himself. He does a better job.
you get chaos. And eventually people will beg for a tyrant just to restore some semblance of order. You can disagree all you want, but that's just a fact.
I want to just say this is maybe the form of conversation that I find the most just draining. I have a difficult time disguising my resentment for it. It immediately, I think naturally in an argument, there's going to be assertions, there's going to be premises, but there's a sort of kind of sentence, and it just oozes with. It crosses the line right over into storytelling and narrative. It has nothing to do with an argument anymore. It's just right to the grandiose statement, like, "Oh, you're gonna beg for a tyrant to come and liberate you from this chaos that you created." But it's in the middle of his critique, so it's to him, he's treating this like it's an actual material criticism of our position. But to me, it's just a wholly inappropriate form of, he's because maybe he doesn't have an opponent is why he's able to do this, but he's just slipped right into storytelling.
Yeah, I completely agree. And for instance, I'll give the proper way to do that is you can paint your case and draw out actual concretes of okay, well, here's an actual concrete situation, here's an actual concrete situation, and let me draw out the abstractions for you and demonstrate why this is all the case. And then you can kind of paint the picture of okay, well then let's go into storytelling now a little bit. But you got to know how to bracket that off into separate little sections, and how to flow between those sections. Because he is just kind of slotting this in as if it's an argument.
Take the drug issue. All right, let's talk about the libertarians' POV on drugs. This is where the libertarian brain rot is the most obvious, because they want to decriminalize everything. And I'm not talking about marijuana, weed. There's an argument to be made there. I'm not even totally against weed. I don't like it personally, but there's an argument to be made for a legitimate medical use, purpose. I don't like when people use it recreationally either, but let's be totally honest, it's not as damaging as crack, okay? But
there's a lot to say here, and I'm sort of trying to decide if it's worth getting into, but just the implicit idea of quantifying the relative utility and harms of these materials and justifying the aggression based on that, I find it's just it's a very foreign way of looking at anything.
Yeah, it's completely unprincipled. It's just totally arbitrary. It's just, what standard are you using to distinguish which drugs should be legal versus illegal?
I think it's a sign, too, of just not having discussed with the actual position when you say things it's not the offhand remark, I'm not talking crack, I'm talking marijuana. So the implication is that there's some sort of general agreement about that. But it's supposed to be the whole context of this discussion in the first place, that we're talking about people who don't share that worldview, right? So we should have just enough self-awareness to investigate where we're disagreeing about that, instead of the topic is we disagree about A, obviously A is wrong, just offhandedly.
Yeah.
So
stuff like meth and fentanyl and heroin, the libertarian argument is always, well, it's their body, buddy, it's their choice. If they die, it's just a Darwin Award.
When's the last time you made that argument, Tulu?
I mean, it is their body fundamentally, so nobody has the right to exclude them from their own body, because they own it. All right. And I don't really. Okay, if you're upset that people are going to take these drugs, I'm sorry that you're upset about that.
In a single sentence, what I think we're seeing here is another example of going from one domain to another, because our position is, as you say, correctly pointing out, that our legal position is that it's their body and it's their choice. It's not even a separate sentence where he goes on to characterize us as mocking the people who die of drug overdoses, right? Now, he's talking about ethics now, because he's trying to make the argument, he's trying to give the perception that this is something that's just reprehensible. It's something that's objectionable about our position. But mocking and just this complete lack of concern. I think, Zulu, we have probably different feelings about how we might express empathy or concern for other people, or, completely immaterial things, in my opinion. But this sort of meandering back and forth between accurately representing the legal position, smuggling in these sort of ethical, objectionable characteristics that we supposedly have. Again, this, like I said when we were at the earlier point in the video, is this a sign of somebody who actually doesn't know the difference between those two things, or is it like a deliberately deceptive attempt to make us look like our legal prescription is to mock people who die of drug overdoses?
Yeah, I would suspect he's just doing the same exact fallacy that pretty much every single statist commits, which is, again, the thing that Bastiat points out, that whenever you say that you are opposed to the government doing something, that must mean that you're opposed to that thing being done at all, right? So if I say that drugs should be legal, they conflate that with drugs are good, right? Because they think in terms of, fundamentally, if they really were consistent in this, that any vicious activity need be stopped by the government. They want to be total puppet slaves of the government. That's their ideal worldview if they're totally consistent about this line of attack.
Sure. And just before I resume, I'll just for the sake of actually having it explicitly out there, a libertarian might say to something like this that we're not indifferent at all about people who are suffering, and we think that, and again, this isn't meant to be an umbrella position that's true of all libertarians, but there's a huge correlation between things like drug abuse and poverty, and we're coming from a position that's arguing that the government is causing the poverty. So we are able to just take a step away from the legal aspect and say, yeah, even if you just grant that we want what's best for those people too, it seems to be the case that it's our position that we're, if not like, I mean, maybe for like a pure selfishness point of view, there's no actual concern about remedying that problem. And that's perfectly fine. And then on the other hand, if you find somebody that's a little bit more of a bleeding heart, we can say, yeah, we're going to rectify that problem by bringing about conditions that are massively superior for people in those situations. But in either case, at both ends of the ANCAP spectrum on that topic, you don't get anywhere as near this sort of, this characterization of us celebrating people dying of drug overdoses. Mm-hmm. Oh, well, unless you're on Discord, I think then you're probably going to see a lot of that. Anyhow.
That is an absolutely retarded way to run a society. Let me ask you this. What is the purpose of the state?
That's a great question.
Well, yeah, we don't think that there is one. Like, I was looking for him to go into his argument for why that's a retarded way to, first of all, run a society. He's kind of smuggling in that there is somebody to run the society, and that, which is smuggling in the collectivist premise that society needs to be run by some entity. Right? So still, like, I want the argument for that. Right? I suppose, yeah, if he's going to say, like, well, what is the purpose of a state? So yeah, he just is smuggling in that there has to be a state. Right? So, well, that's a retarded way to run a society. That's a retarded way for a state to operate. What is the purpose of a state? And this purpose of a state is like, whoa, but what if we just check that initial premise that there should be a state in the first place? What if we just do that? And then this whole thing falls.
It seems like he wants to establish that the state is necessary or justified because it has a purpose. And it has a purpose in the sense that, a hammer or a screwdriver or whatever, a wrench has a purpose. But to me, and this is going to be a somewhat tortured hypothetical, but I'm tremendously guilty of doing this. Imagine that I created a paper hammer and my intention with it was to drive nails with this paper hammer. Then I call it the widget. You say, well, what is the purpose of the widget? It's to drive nails. And then you start from there, and now you're going to go down this sort of justificatory process of explaining why it's appropriate to have a widget in your toolbox, or it's appropriate to use or the widget has to have a certain attribute about it, or like all these sort of things. And it's just a very, if you frame it any other way than with the state, it's such an obviously bizarre line of reasoning. But for some reason, I actually think it's effective for people who are coming from this point of view to say, well, what is the purpose of the state? And to just smuggle in basically the whole argument right in that opening.
What is the purpose of a government if it cannot do something as simple as keeping poison out of the hands of its own citizens? We are not isolated
just pause
atoms.
right there. This guy seems to be a big Constitution supporter. Now, I do want to just I was watching the stream. I seem to remember something about the Constitution. Let me just check this up to make sure that I'm remembering correctly here. I believe it's called the Second Amendment. Is that the one? Is the Second Amendment? Something like that. Oh yes, the Second Amendment. That's the one to the United States Constitution. Let's see the text of that one. A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, is poison, is that not a type of arm? Is that not a weapon? Poison not a weapon? Whoops daisies, you've violated the Second Amendment right there in your advocacy. So don't be going around going like, oh my god, you libertarians, we love you because you love the Constitution so much, but you're contradicting the Constitution. You're doing the same thing. All right? The purpose of the state, according to your lovely little constitutional document here, includes that the state shall not infringe the right to keep and bear arms. So the state that is outside the purview of the state, according to you, it's outside the purview of the state to keep poison out of the hands of citizens. Whoops daisies.
Well, you know that they're going to say that obviously poison isn't an arm.
And then it's like, what is an armament then?
I just wonder how, like, I don't know, is there any fruitful way to go down that semantic disagreement where they're just going to refuse to grant you that poison is an arm?
Well, I suppose,
Probably not.
I think it's effective enough for people who are honest enough to just read. Obviously, it won't work on the Supreme Court of the United States because they don't think that guns are arms. They think it's fine to to infringe the right to keep and bear guns, and so it's not going to work on the Supreme Court. But any honest man who reads that and can just read English, I think will get. And that's all I really care about. Is just preach out to the honest men who can read English and can very clearly see that this is a type of arm.
Floating in a void. That is not what humans are. We are a community. A junkie, for example, shooting up in a park is not just exercising his liberty or something. He is a black.
The idea of just offhandedly dismissing or something, like just liberty.
Light on the neighborhood. He is a danger to children. He is a drain on the resources of the productive citizens.
Wow, a drain on the resources of productive citizens. Can we think of any other examples? Maybe one that he's advocating for that could be conceived of as a drain on the resources of productive citizens. Not taxes.
A particularly systematic drain on the resources of specifically productive individuals.
Yeah, I mean the liability of having a drug user in your park is more harmful to production than the resources, the actual material resources that have to be diverted to take him out of the park. I find that curious. But brace yourself, because where he's going with this is going to blow your mind.
Now, I'm not calling for a return to the 1990s style war on drugs or what have you, but it is basic common sense. It's logic 101, actually, that you keep drugs made in some guy's bathtub or a sketchy lab in China or Mexico illegal.
Whoa.
You use the law.
I must have missed that part when I was studying Aristotle. Logic 101. Like, I remember there was the law of identity, he had that one, the law of non-contradiction, the scholastics, they also got the law of exclude middle. Oh yeah, and then they did actually add on that you got to keep drugs made in somebody's bathtub illegal. Yeah, I do remember that class in logic. What is he saying? That's not Logic 101. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. It's an attempt to, obviously, I mean, this goes without saying, an attempt to discredit us, but kind of a bit of a fumble there.
As a deterrent. You don't just shrug your shoulders and say, no, live and let live. Darwin Award. Because.
And I think this is a great point before he even gets to the crescendo of this argument he's making, is just to point out, like, he just doesn't understand that what we're talking about isn't that the park currently owned by the government just becomes permanently unowned forever. Like, if the park was privately owned, which if what we're advocating for were to come around, it would be the simplest thing in the world to trespass a drug user, not only in a practical sense but in a legal sense.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing confusing about this. There's nothing complicated about it. I mean, this is right at this, when it comes to like how complicated some of the topics in libertarian get. This is just right at the most, like, I'm sure a child could intuit that's where we would be coming from with this, right?
Yeah, somebody did.
It's the inevitable result.
Somebody did point out in chat. He said there is an argument to be made, and then doesn't make an argument.
well, get used to that, guys, because that's just logic 101 right there. Don't argue.
Result of the libertarian policy isn't just people doing what they want. It's state subsidized suicide. So look at what happens when these policies get enacted that they are so in supportive of. You don't get a free market of drugs if you were to just legalize everything. What they want is something called safe injection sites. I argued with this guy before.
What?
That's right. We're going to be, as libertarians, defending state-subsidized safe injection sites.
What?
I think it was on Discord. This was years ago. I wasn't even doing YouTube. I don't even really remember who he was or what it was. I just remember this conversation. But anyways, he said we need to have safe injection sites. He wanted everyone, like the taxpayer, to pay for basically overdose facilities.
Were you arguing with a Democrat? Like, what is it? What relation is this for the thesis of the video? We don't believe this. We don't believe there should be taxpayers.
It almost disqualifies us from reviewing the video any further, because surely at this point he's so separated from libertarians with what he's accusing us of, and he says it. He spells it out. There's no creative license being taken with interpreting what he's accusing us of. He thinks the libertarian position is state subsidized by the taxpayer, specifically safe injection sites. What can we say about that?
It's like if anybody played around with some of those early large language models like GPT-2, GPT-3, and you just get it to keep, like, you start it with some premise for a story, and you get it to keep writing and writing and writing and extending it out, and it would just go down all these crazy routes, and like by the end it's a completely different story, completely disconnected from the first line, because it's just completely dropped that out of its context. Like, I feel like that's what this video is. He's almost forgotten that he's supposed to be arguing against libertarians here. It's like, oh, and by the way, on the topic of drugs, I was talking to this guy, and he was talking about safe injection sites. This is crazy stuff, guys. Like, this has no connection to the thesis at hand. What are you talking about?
I have to say, anyone who doesn't know me, I've only just recently started streaming. All the content I've made in my life up to this point has been something I'd spend weeks, sometimes months producing. So I'm a little bit nervous about going on to a live stream and then losing my train of thought. That'd be embarrassing, right? But I'll never feel insecure again, because the extent that he is so far from where he started that I don't know. I don't even have anything funny to say about it. It's just shockingly far how he's drifted. So let's see. Maybe he'll remember and he'll jump back on track.
I've had libertarians seriously argue that this is a good solution. It's places where junkies can go.
Which libertarians?
Shoot up safely, and if
can you show a single example? Show one example of one libertarian saying that. Like, I mean, listen, guy, I know you like to have your videos basically just be random footage of Call of Duty, but if you go into any non-linear editor, you can actually do this crazy thing where you show like an image on screen, or even over top of your gameplay footage. You don't have to get rid of that. It's okay. But you can actually just show an image on screen where you could show some of these libertarians advocating this if you wanted to. Why don't you do that?
Yeah, I think just he already said, I mean, he's got to be, I have to charge him with the crime of being self-aware that this is not an appropriate line of accusation, because he's already put a bunch of effort into saying like, hey, look, I don't remember which Discord I was in. I don't remember who it was I was talking to. Actually, I just remember that the statement was made like completely absent of context. So he knows. I hate to do the psychoanalysis thing. I'm going to absolutely like, debase myself later in penance. But this guy must know, surely, that this is just absolutely absurd that he would try and pin something on us on the basis that he had a conversation so long ago that he doesn't remember the conversation that he's telling us about.
Yeah. I actually
overdose.
had a conversation with some guy. This is gonna be my debunking of Jimmy Talks here. I actually had a conversation long ago. Some guy, I don't remember what his beliefs were. I don't remember what his name was. I don't really remember anything about him. But he said that pigs could fly. Isn't that crazy, guys?
I think for him, I just hope he understands that I actually had a conversation with Christians, and I happen to know for a fact that Christians deny the resurrection, and I very much hope that now that I've proven that the next time he makes an appearance, he wants to talk about Christian nationalism, that he will do his due diligence and also deny the resurrection.
A medical professional paid for by your tax dollars hits them with Narcan so they can wake up and do it again tomorrow.
I think every single time that he does this, and he emphasizes dramatically, paid for with your tax dollars, is the prescription of the libertarian position. I think he needs to be lambasted individually every time he does that.
Yeah, like again, I'm just gonna pull up this video on like a tab. I want to see like what people are saying in the comments. Are they saying like, oh my god, these libertarians are so crazy? Glad I got rid of being a libertarian. I'm just a nationalist now. I stopped building the blah 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 blah. We would need a people are not picking up on how that he's just not even talking about libertarianism here. This is ludicrous, and this passes for, I guess, a political essay. This is insanity.
Something I said to somebody recently, and I meant it, is I used to have a problem with how many people were getting their news and their views from late night comedians. Like, so you'd have like Stephen Colbert and Jon Stewart was the genuine source of information for a lot of people. And I thought that was just like a really despicable, a really unfortunate trend. And now it's somehow devolved worse. So it's no longer, big names like Stephen Colbert who are, let's say propagandists who are on their, their late night TV shows. Now it's Jimmy Talks in his basement who's got the huge reach. And he doesn't even know like the bare minimum that they know at this point. Our position, if you are having a conversation with a layperson, you could adequately summarize our position as no tax dollars.
Yeah.
3 words. And he gets that information in his ear and he goes, you want to spend taxpayer money on Narcan?
Like, yeah, because what is probably the most famous libertarian saying? It's taxation is theft, right? Like, that's probably one of, if not the most famous saying. And like, if you did have one of these propagandists, like a Jimmy Fallon talking about libertarianism, they would definitely twist the truth in certain ways. But they would at least go like, oh, and look at what this libertarian said, and they'd show a picture of a libertarian saying something, oh, wacky and crazy. Like, they say they want, drugs to be legal, and look at this. And they'd show like a clip of Ron Paul or something. But at least then they would show what we're saying. They'd probably clip out of context and everything. This guy isn't even doing that. He's not even taking that step. He's just pontificating about what we believe, and just lying.
Do people seriously think that's a good idea to have in a neighborhood
No.
or a school?
We don't think that.
Oh, you think free junkie centers are the hallmark of a high trust society?
No.
No, absolutely not.
I'll tell you what it. Oh, I really want to comment on this because this pisses me off. what does a high trust society mean? It means a peaceful society. It means a society free of aggression. That is, a high trust society is a libertarian society. You do not have a high trust society to whatever extent you have aggression. That's the very hallmark. Like, if I'm putting out like one of those, book boxes where it's like, hey, or like one of those like egg stalls where a farmer will just put out the eggs. It's like, hey, you got to put the money in like this box, and there's like, it's completely unmanned, right? That can only work in a high trust society. Why? Because in a low trust society, somebody's just going to steal your shit. Whoa. That is the defining mark of the low trust society, is that somebody will commit aggression against you. Somebody's going to violate your property rights. So if you really want this high trust society, JimmyTalks, you want the non-aggression principle. That's the very precondition to have a high trust society. That's the very meaning of a high trust society, is one which obeys the non-aggression principle.
I think maybe he has achieved apotheosis here, because he's not only drifted to the point that he forgot he was talking about libertarians, but he just is a libertarian now since we're fully agreeing with him. And we didn't even have to do any work. He just got there on his own.
People are not incentivized to get clean when you give them a padded room to do drugs and just destroy themselves.
We would agree so strongly with that, I think. And who's doing that, right? If it's a taxpayer-funded program, who is doing that? Who's bringing that incentive into being?
It's the evil libertarians in government. This is what we've been advocating this whole time, that we need a bigger government. What is he talking? He just started talking about Democrats, I guess. And no, I know how he got here. Because his thesis was that we enable the leftist regime or whatever. And the way he's trying to prove that is at some point he just stopped talking about libertarianism, started talking about leftism, and said, this is what the libertarians are after. But like, it's just a lie. And that's his proof that we're enabling the leftist regime.
That is not...
Sorry, just remember, he accused us of being useful idiots.
Liberty, that is just the state aiding and abetting the destruction of its own people.
He actually got there. He actually came full circle and said that sentence. He has got there. He's a libertarian, at least for the next 10 seconds.
Yep.
To everyone who maybe missed that because we're cutting off the sentence, what he just said was he's criticizing the state for destroying its own population through creating these incentives to do drugs.
That's absolutely fucking insane to me. Now,
Agreed.
Libertarian economics. Let's move on to that. Libertarians worship the free market like it's a god.
Wow. It's Sunday today. I forgot to go to free market church.
Yeah. I do like that it's always the Christians who are like, you worship this thing like it's your god. As if that's like supposed to be a slight, when they literally do worship something like it's their god, namely the god that they worship. Like, as if that's like, this is alien thinking to them. It's always the Christians who like say like, oh, you treat the NDP like it's some kind of god. It's like, motherfucker, aren't you religious? Like, what are you talking about here? Like, I think it was Dave Smith in his Twitter space where he was like criticizing principled libertarians of being like, oh, they're kind of like religious thinkers because they just treat these things as, it's like, hang on, Dave, aren't you a Christian? Like, you're a religious thinker. That's you.
Yeah, what is it with all these people? Everyone's just veering off course today. I think we got to do something to, we got to get like shock collars on them or something, so they got to stay within a certain distance of the core topic. But only if they put them on voluntarily.
Indeed.
In a vacuum, sure. I'll give them that. The idea sounds nice.
Wait, so it's okay to worship, because he's accusing us of literally worshiping the free market. I guess that's okay in a vacuum. I wonder what we need to do to establish the vacuum so that we can pull out the prayer mats.
Yeah. Like, that's the thing. Any vacuum, that's like a very vague phrase. I suppose maybe he'll elaborate on that, because this is just often like, yeah, sure, that would work in a vacuum. Like, okay, so what you mean by that is it would work absent some particular considerations. What specifically are those considerations which make the free market no longer work? What specifically, what are they?
In demographically stable, high trust country, a free market is great, actually. But we don't live in that. We don't live in a perfect textbook. We live in modern America.
Free market doesn't work because it's a low trust society. Okay, so for the free market to work, we need a high trust society, so we need the non-aggression principle. And then the free market can work. I'm in agreement. A free market does not obtain if you have aggression. Insofar as you have aggression, a free market does not obtain. I agree with that 100%. And if that's the specific consideration at hand here, libertarians don't claim that you can have a free market with aggression. We don't claim that.
Yeah, and I think too, I'm going to give him a little bit of credit here because he did specifically say that he wants to talk about economics now specifically. But I do want to point out that the libertarian position won't change because he's talking about the economic aspect of it. We're starting with legality and we're heading into economics as understanding the implications that the legal aspect has on the economic aspect. Now that said, if you get a less desirable result when the people who are doing the non-aggression pact, the people who are participating in the voluntary society, are higher time preference or it's a lower trust situation, that doesn't affect what the core of what we're saying is, which is the prescription not to aggress.
Mm.
A totally free market in a country like this never works out the way that they promise it would.
Now, I've been told that it's never been tried. Yeah. Is he suggesting that there's been a lot of attempts? There's been a lot of free market experiments? I don't know which way I'm supposed to go with that.
It was like, all those previous times when the LP was elected at presidency, and then it totally failed. Like surely we all remember all those previous times that the LP got elected, and they kept trying again and again. People kept trusting them, and it kept degrading more and more and more. Oh, wait, hold on a minute. No, it was the big statist parties who kept getting elected and kept making everything worse. Interesting.
Basically, it always ends in one of two ways. Either the government and the corporations collude together through backroom deals and lobbying to crush the little guy, like small family businesses in Main Street, and it ends up being all about...
It pains me so much that he just keeps coming so close. It's like he's driving through the neighborhood. Just get out and smell the air, right? Like touch some grass, to borrow a cliche. Like, that's what we're saying. That's what we hate to see. We hate to see the government doing what it does. We hate to see the monopolies that only exist because of the government doing what they do. We especially hate the collusion. If these are priorities to somebody like this, they should really consider the possibility that it's a principled ideological position like the one we're advocating for that's going to best serve their priorities. And they come so close to seeing it. They're saying the same sentences that we say, but just something is keeping them afraid of biting the bullet.
Yeah, it's because fundamentally what, like, really, sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Something about the monopolies. Maybe I'll get it back again.
Sure.
Wall Street instead, or the market gets so insane that one massive monopoly ends up running the whole entire country anyways.
Yeah, it's oh fuck! I'm getting so close. It's right on the tip of my tongue.
You know what it is? It's your proximity to JimmyTalks is actually infecting you with topic meanderitis.
Yeah, I'm so. Oh my god! This is gonna kill me. Fuck.
Was it in response to what he said or what I said about the collusion between the state and the corporations?
Oh my god! I can't remember. It's completely gone from my mind. If I remember, I'm just gonna scream and then start blurting it out, and then at least it's on tape.
Jimmy Talks is a legitimately misunderstanding libertarianism so bad it's become a memetic hazard.
Yeah.
So everybody just be careful.
This is an SCP, like a memetic. It's a cognito hazard. It's destroying my ability to think.
I'm worried that we might like have some of our viewers are going to walk away from this just forgetting that they're libertarians.
Yeah.
So the fact of the matter is we need regulations. Not the shitty, excessive red tape that we have now. Of course, there's an argument to be made there. There's nuance to everything, right?
This is such a confused attempt at a coherent political prescription. I have to say, like, if you ask a libertarian, and it was Peter Schiff at the Occupy Wall Street who first introduced me to this a long time ago when I wasn't used to thinking about it this way. But what is he saying he's worried about? He's worried about the corporations. He's worried about the influence they have over the state. Why is he worried about the influence that the corporations have over the state? Right? He has an objection to what the state is doing. He has this sort of framework for understanding that when the state is crushing businesses with regulations or whatever they're doing, he understands that. And when he has the mental ingredient, let's call it, he's got this component that says the government did this because of the corporations, then he can fully see with crystal clarity that what the government doing is wrong. But when it's not for that, you take the corporation aspect out of it, the exact same activity is the government acting in the interests of the people.
Mm.
But regulations to prevent slave labor factories from undercutting American workers and importing H-1Bs and to prevent distinct moral hazards
Hold on.
is kind of neat.
Did he just conflate slave labor factories undercutting American firms and importing H-1Bs? Like, does he think the slave labor factories are importing the H-1B visa people? Like, does he not know how expensive it is for a business to sponsor a person with a H-1B visa? It's like hundreds of thousands of dollars, I think. Like, it's very expensive to sponsor someone for that visa, and they've got to prove that this is a job which an American couldn't, it can't be filled by any Americans. But they got to prove that to the government. Like, this is the opposite of, like, presumably he's talking about sweatshops. There's very few slave labor factories out there. There are a few, but very vanishingly few. And I'll bite the bullet. Sweatshops are a very good thing. You know who else thinks that sweatshops are a very good thing? Sweatshop workers. That's why they work in the sweatshops. They think it's better than their alternative. Like, people forget just how miserable life can be. That a sweatshop can be vastly better than your alternative.
I think there's probably an argument to be made that the sweatshop workers who want to work somewhere else without actually providing greater value are participating in rent-seeking behavior. But maybe I shouldn't go there right now. Let's see if Jimmy has something else to say about that. Maybe he'll clarify his position on the H-1B visas.
But ultimately, it comes down to a deeper rot, and that is the banking system. Now on this, I actually agree with libertarians on the diagnosis, big time. Like, we need sound money. I'm all about precious metals. I'm always talking about it, especially if you follow me on Twitter, you know I am. We need to return to precious metals. The Federal Reserve is a criminal organization. Totally agree. But the libertarian solution of just let the banks do whatever doesn't work in a...
Nuh-uh. That's not a libertarian solution.
I mean, does he mean within, like, the scope of non-aggressive and non-fraudulent activity, maybe? Like,
yeah, so...
or does he actually think that the banks are going to have completely unrestricted activity and no legal constraints?
I suppose I will give, like, one caveat, where there is a certain group called the free bankers, so-called free banking, where they think that banks should be allowed to engage in a fractional reserve, where they can, loan out some of the money in the vault and so on and so forth. Now, this is not a position shared by all Austrians or all libertarians. This is a very specific set of people, which I disagree with wholly. right? I think that's a form of fraud, fractional reserve banking, because fundamentally a bank is supposed to be a warehouse of money. If you're loaning out some of that money, then you're getting more money certificates, more property titles than actually property in the vault. That's fraud. You can't have that.
Yeah, and I always take this opportunity to advocate for the book Money. Man, what's it called?
Money, business
by
cycles,
Jesus.
and banking, whatever.
Yeah, it's the one by Jesus DeSoto. I've never forgotten the name before. I think I've just been saying it so much that the cognito hazard has stripped it from my brain. But Jesus DeSoto has got an incredible book on this. The problem with it is that the treatment of the topic is very dense, so you can't refresh yourself on it quickly.
Money, bank, credit, and economic cycles.
100%. Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of. Highly recommend it, and just be aware. I think it's like a minimum of 1,400 pages. I think it's longer. All right.
Fiat-based debt economy. The banks don't operate on equity anymore. They operate on debt. That is how the whole country works. That's the American economy. It's all ran off of debt with fake paper money. So the banks don't take a hit if they invest into something and the company fails. They don't care. They throw out loans to anyone who wants them, like student loans.
I just want to point out here for anyone listening, he seamlessly transitioned from what he thinks the libertarians are prescribing into what the current state of affairs is. And he already understands that the libertarians are prescribing something other than the status quo. That's been implicit in what he's saying up to this point. But then, now, he's criticizing the current state of affairs as if this is somehow connected to libertarians want to enable this, or libertarians are trying to bring this about, and totally not considering at all what should be perhaps intuitive, that it is the state that's making this thing that he's objecting to possible in the first place and incentivized now that it is possible.
Yeah, and it's a very slimy tactic to be using here, where, you know, it's like, and these, fucking, I don't know, feminists, they're so terrible that they believe, terrible things, and, so on and so forth. And currently there is all these rape gangs going about, as if you're still talking about the same topic.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Mortgages, business loans, literally any retard ever can get a loan. It's kind of crazy. But they will collect interest off the backs of these people. It doesn't matter how stupid someone is.
Really, I don't think we need to be economically experts here, experts at economics, to see what the problem is here. What circumstances are necessary for a bank to give its money away with no concern of the repayment? Right? Like why would we expect that in a free market? Why would we expect that in a circumstance where the loans aren't being guaranteed by the state? Because of course we can all agree with what the harms are that are happening here. This is something that libertarians would just as enthusiastically, if not more so, bemoan. But it seems at the same time that he's not making the connection at all. So really, I wish he were here so I could ask him, how could this possibly come about in the absence of a state?
Yeah, because let's say that you are in a free market, and I'm an investor. I've got a lot of money. I'm going to invest it, and I'm just going to invest it into any retard who has like any half-cocked business idea, and I'm not going to care if they can ever, repay it or whatever. Guess what's going to happen is I'm going to run out of money very quickly, and I'm no longer going to be in the investing business, right? This is the thing with the free market. It's almost got this a Darwinian selection going on, where you select for the best investors, you select for the best entrepreneurs, because the other ones, they go out of business, and they're no longer in the investing game any longer. So you don't get these, permanent malinvestments any longer.
Sorry, I'm trying not to pay too much attention to the chat, but somebody just said that he just found out that JimmyTalks is familiar with the economic calculation problem as put forward by Mises. And if that's true, I don't know. I make that's depressing. Anyway, I guess we'll continue.
They can get a loan anyways. That is how banks make their money. So this basically encourages a never-ending debt cycle that enslaves the population. This system does not benefit the small business on Main Street. It benefits the massive conglomerate companies on Wall Street. The banks want to work with the massive companies because it's efficient. They want to work in tandem with the government, and we saw this in 2008. The banks failed in real estate crash. Did the free market punish them? No. The U.S. government stepped in and bailed them out because these companies were just too big to fail.
Does it even require commentary? Did the free market stop them? No, because the government came in. I wonder what the issue with that might be then. What step was wrong with that? Was the free market part wrong? Or was the government bailing them out wrong? Was that perhaps no longer the free market?
I think that I want to say he's got all the building blocks he needs to he's got everything he needs to figure this out. But that doesn't capture it. I mean, it's more than that. It's like he's got all the building blocks and more. He's got help from the teacher's assistant. Like he's got everything he needs to put this together, and it's just not clicking for him. And this is like, how many sentences is he going to say that they're not even just sort of adjacent? They're not running parallel to our position. He's actually just explicitly saying the libertarian position as if it's his and not the libertarians, consistently throughout this critique.
Yeah, it's the problem. The real big problem with libertarianism, my big critique of libertarianism, is that those libertarians, they're really in favor of the government bailing out big banks and abrogating the free market in that way. That's the problem with libertarianism. It's maybe he just goes through like a big. He wants to have all the anti-libertarian critiques of libertarianism, but then he just takes all of the libertarian critiques of other ideologies and just presents them as if they're critiques of libertarianism as well. Because then he just gets double the critiques.
Well, you got to admit, that's pretty efficient. He's got the content aspect of this figured out.
That is the reality of the system we live in. Libertarians will say, though, that wasn't real capitalism, but that doesn't matter.
It's not even that it's fake capitalism. It's just, that's not capitalism.
So, no, but he's telling us in this moment, he just told us that someone already corrected him. So he's implying that he's already heard the argument that the banks being bailed out by the state is not what's being advocated for. And his counter argument to that rebuttal is whatever.
Yeah.
That is the reality of
who cares? It's okay. That is the reality. That's the system we live in. It's like, whoa, hold on, but that's not what we're advocating for.
Right. Yeah, well, he's mid-sentence right now saying that that's the way that it is. Right. That's exactly why we advocate for a change to the status quo and not the status quo itself.
Power. You cannot separate economic power from political power. We need an economic system that favors the small family business and the farmer and just the local guy. And we need to crush the big banking cartel.
Do we? So the question for me then is, obviously what he's advocating for is to prefer one individual over another through political and economic power. How do we reach, I mean, if we, like, let's take ethics aside, assuming that the big banks aren't doing anything aggressive, why is a big bank worse than the mom and pop shop? He mentioned earlier that there was an economy of scale that happens, and he's correct about this. The big banks prefer to deal with larger sums of money in individual transactions. It's more efficient. And the more efficient that a firm can handle, then there's benefits to that. Everyone here who's an ANCAP understands economies of scale. That creates market opportunities for smaller businesses to become banks, right? What banking needs getting done, which is going undone because the bigger banks won't do it, creates the opportunity for smaller banks to come in. This is a healthy and normal economic process that's unfolding. But also, those bigger banks that are doing the neglecting, they're facilitating things like Amazon and Walmart and the types of firms that we understand to be operating at the largest economies of scale, giving consumers the lowest opportunity costs to get. And I mean, looking at firms like Walmart, obviously there's a massive selection that you can acquire through Amazon or department stores. So all aspects of human lives are being improved through this process. So if the critique is intended to be focused on the activities that the banks get up to when they're protected by the state, then those are worthy of critique, and they have to be understood as extensions of state activity. But to sort of get involved in this class warfare idea, the mom and pop versus the corporation and the bigger banks, this sort of tribalism for its own sake will necessarily lead to economic devastation.
And ironically enough, he started out saying that, well, we're useful idiots for the leftists. We just end up supporting the leftist causes. Ironically, he's making a leftist argument here that we need to support the little guy. We don't want those big Wall Street evil capitalists. That's a leftist movement right there that you're supporting. You are being a useful idiot for communism right now. That's what you're doing right now, JimmyTalks. Literally, I'm not just saying your argument and then presenting it as if it's a communist. That is literally what the communists believe. Like, are we being real here?
The extent to which we're coming full circle over and over again with this video is actually starting to generate electricity. I think my power bill is going down thanks to watching this video.
It was once a circle, but now it turns out that circle was a spiral, a downward spiral, right down the drain.
Well, I guess we're going to find out how far it goes, because he's not pulling any of the stops out. He's doubling down.
Give them more freedom to give predatory loans to the American middle class to destroy it into oblivion.
What's a predatory loan? Right?
Yeah.
If he's saying something that's entered into voluntarily, I mean, why can somebody not take a payday loan? Payday loans are the staple. They're the poster child for predatory loans, right? But people find themselves, especially individuals who are high time preference, which isn't meant to be a disparaging remark in this case. They find themselves in situations where they have planned poorly, or their lack of savings puts them in a precarious moment, or, I mean, there's an almost unlimited amount of explanations. But payday loans, they enter into those because they understand that entering into the payday loan contract is better than the alternative. They need that money for one reason or another. So we need to protect them from that, such that the prescription that Jimmy wants to see implemented is that these people who are entering into those kinds of loans, they need to go without whatever it was that they thought they needed the money for. Jimmy knows better, and they need to be forcefully prevented from making those transactions.
And I also want to be clear that those people, they wouldn't get that beneficial arrangement. They wouldn't get that loan in the first place if the person loaning it out didn't believe that they would ever pay it back. Right? They're not going to get that. So if, you protect them from ever having to pay it back, it's okay, you're not going to get those loans anymore. And then those people, they're not going to have that, pardon me, that escape hatch from their bad planning, right? I do want to clarify one thing on our theory. So this is something I get from Kinsella. There was this whole debate about this in the papers. You can read about this in my course on my website, liquidzulu.github.io, on the lesson on contract theory. There's a type of thing called an aleatory contract. Now, if you just have the most basic sort of loan, where I say, hey, Galazar, I'm going to give you $100 now for your business plan. In exchange, you give me $110 in a month's time, right? Now, if in a month's time you do not have $110, the loan's gone bad, right? I'm not owed anything because there's nothing for you to transfer towards me, right? This is called an aleatory contract. It's a future-facing contract. It has the implicit term, unless it's impossible, right? Because there are some incorrect jurists who posit that, well, no, you've stolen like the original amount. But no, he hasn't stolen the original amount because I transferred that to him. Voluntarily, I transferred it to him. I loaned it out to him. And it doesn't exist anymore. Oh, but maybe he stole $110 from me because that's what he is supposed to now owe me. No, he can't have stolen that from me because it doesn't exist. The $110 doesn't exist. Right? So neither option works. So it's just the loan has gone bad. So you'd have to construct the contracts in such a way to deal with that, and ultimately you might never get your money back, and that just kind of sucks, and then you'd have to only like loan out to people who you expect to get your money back from, right? It becomes an entrepreneurial endeavor.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally put my seal of approval on all of that. And just before I hit play again, I'll go back to what you said earlier about the sweatshops, where it's clear that the sweatshops is what the sweatshop worker thinks is what's best for them, given the limited options that they have at their disposal. And we can assume from how undesirable sweatshop work is that the alternatives must be quite serious indeed. And we see the exact same dynamic as a necessary implication from the extraordinary high interest that you see. I mean, extraordinary relative to other loans on the payday loans. So it must be the case that these loans that Jimmy thinks people ought to be protected from are loans that the people whom will have to go without on their own believe are very important.
Mm.
Now, this leads us to the issue of borders and the nation itself. This is the biggest rift between myself and libertarians, because libertarians believe in magic dirt theory. They believe that America is just a piece of land with some lines on a map, and that anyone who steps across those lines becomes an American with their new piece of paper.
No. So this is outside the realm of legal theory. We don't think there is such a thing as a citizen of the United States government, right? Because we don't think there should be a United States government, right? So that's out. And libertarianism doesn't have anything to say on like whether they become truly American or whether they're still like, German if they immigrated from Germany or whatever, right? Libertarianism doesn't have anything to say about that, okay? So no, we don't. Libertarianism does not include magic dirt theory. What I'm saying, for instance, is that the state doesn't own the United States of America. Therefore, it doesn't have the right to exclude anybody from it. Simple as that. All right, that's I elaborate on it very, very much so elsewhere. But that's the argument in essence. It has nothing to do with whether you become an American by having a piece of paper. It has nothing to do with that. That's just completely outside of anything that libertarianism is claiming.
They believe in the idea of a propositional nation, like Vivek Ramaswamy would tell you, that as long as you sign a piece of paper and you pay your taxes, you're just as American as a descendant of the Mayflower.
Well, I suppose it's conceivable that some libertarians are arguing that, at least.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not part of libertarianism.
No, but at least the improvement that we can give him here is that it's a little bit more conceivable that somebody had argued for that, as opposed to, for example, the libertarians he claims are arguing for taxpayer-funded safe injection sites.
Yeah.
So he's moving in the direction of like slightly closer to Earth.
Yeah.
That is a lie. Demographics are destiny. People have gotten on my ass about this, and Jimmy, blah, blah, blah. I don't.
Now that might be the worst case I've ever seen of a straw man. What did Jimmy's critics say? Blah, blah, blah.
Mm.
Care that it's just a fact of the matter. Don't hate me. I don't make the rules here, right? Culture is not some abstract concept that's floating in the ether land. It is the biological.
Actually, it is a concept. Like, it's an abstraction. Like, not a concrete. Like, culture is. Like, do you think culture? Could you show me culture? Like, there might be particular cultures, right? But culture is an abstraction.
Actually, Zulu, this you might not know about this recent research that came out, but biologists discovered the culture organ.
Ah, okay.
And they're very distinct.
the culture atoms floating out there somewhere.
And historical identity of a specific people. Libertarians refuse to acknowledge that high trust societies like the one America used to be are actually pretty rare.
Why did it used to be more high trust when the government was way smaller? Why? What does it mean for it to be high trust again? What caused that?
They are also fragile. They are the results of centuries of shared religion, shared blood, and a shared struggle, a shared identity. So when libertarians advocate for open borders because they want the free movement of labor, it's all about economy and materialism to them.
Is that true of you, Zulu? Has this whole time you've just been trying to staff your factories more fully? Is that your motive?
Yeah, no. I don't really care about the economic arguments or anything. And in fact, I've said this before and I'll say it again. I'm probably in like the top 1% in terms of people who are for open borders. I'm probably in the top 1% of the people who hate the immigrants the most. I've never been like the Cato types where it's like, oh no, the immigrants, they're just so great and so peaceful and so libertarian. I love them so much. Like, I just want a million of them. I just want as many as I can get. I just want to gobble them all up and have as many around. Like, it's never been about that. It's always just been about, okay, well, whether I want them around me or not isn't relevant to whether or not what matters is what means am I allowed to implement to associate or not associate with them. I'm not allowed to implement that nobody in my country is allowed to associate with immigrants if they want, right? I am allowed to choose if I want to associate with a certain immigrant or not. That's the extent of what I get to do. I don't get to have the government come in and make sure that nobody can associate with immigrants who I don't want to associate with. That's not within my rights.
Let's take, for example, that we were in agreement, and this everything for people who are listening. This is everything I'm saying here is purely hypothetical about our values. But let's say that Zulu and I and Jimmy, we all agree that we absolutely do not want any immigrants, including the ones that are already here. Again, purely hypothetical. What I would say is a really interesting aspect of this is that the free market is going to not only is that going to rectify the situation in some sense, but better than the alternatives, because let's consider some alternatives specifically. If you're going to try to, let's say we take a really hard line on this, say, okay, we want to, no more immigrants are allowed in the country, so we're going to invest in trying to stop that from happening. Well, obviously, that's tricky. Look at the Americans' southern border. It's obviously a complicated proposition, an expensive and effortful thing, and not 100% effective to keep immigrants out. And let's say that we're going to start to remove them by force. So we have to start, right off the bat, even if the force is not prescribing lethal force, we're just going to remove them through non-lethal means. You're still going to see, you got to track them down. You got to go through the effort of catching them. You got to still do the actual physical deportation once you have them in your custody. And not to mention the amount of resistance to such a legislation would be unfathomable. I think ICE is doing like a very small amount of that now, and there's already huge resistance to that if an empirical precedent has any relevance here. But if we simply just take the free market approach and say, okay, all the welfare is gone, all the subsidies are gone, then every single immigrant who is, and when I say immigrant here, I'm meaning this in sort of like a narrower sense. So I'm talking about the ones who are the specific type which JimmyTalks seems to be concerned about, which are the like super low wage, super low skill, high time preference types. They have just received an enormous incentive to get the hell out of Dodge as fast as possible. And relatively, all these other states that are preserving their welfare institutions, there are massive relative incentives to emigrate to those locations. So I think that for me, it seems to be the case that the free market solution is going to instill in every immigrant an incentive to leave if they're here, not come here in the first place if they aren't, and that's something that each one of those individuals can act on their own without any expenditure of resources or time or energy on our part. Whereas the proposal that Jimmy has for solving that exact same problem seems to be completely ineffective from the start and extraordinarily costly in time and effort.
Yeah, and like, this is really the beauty of the free market approach. If you did have a true free market in some area, you're only going to get the best of the best going to that area. You're only going to get productive individuals going there to try and make something. And then it is true harmony. But you're not going to get hordes of like anti-productive, like, brutes. Because how are they going to make their money? Right? They can't live on like welfare payments. They can't they could try to rob and steal people. I mean, good fucking luck. If you have a free market defense, good luck trying to overcome that if you're some like brute who's going to try and club people over the head and take their stuff. Right? Good luck trying to overcome like the most sophisticated military force ever seen by humanity. Far more sophisticated, than any state military has ever been. Good luck with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Total agreement.
They are advocating for the permanent destruction of the right. They will look at a Somalian who got here yesterday and a man whose family fought in the Revolutionary War, and they see two identical economic units.
Nope. Nope. Uh-uh.
It's strange to me, this like fixation. Again, it was what I invoked earlier when I mentioned the theistic, like the young earth creationist, just the repulsion at the idea that we're animals or monkeys or related to monkeys. Like there's just this repulsion, and he's got this idea that we're just these calculating robots and we just see everything as economic units. But it demands an explanation for me. Where is he getting this impression from? Is it just from the fact that we talk about the free market, which is an economic topic? So he sees us as interested in economics. We must be calculating about it. Like I find it to be such a strangely alien way to characterize such a pro-social ideology.
Yeah. I on that point, I believe Mises was going to his magnum opus, Human Action. I believe at one point he was going to call it something like social cooperation. And he went with Human Action because he thought those were like basically on the same level of importance to his economic theory.
Right, absolutely.
Like, oh yeah, that Somalian who got here yesterday, yeah, he should have a gun too. Like, what?
Well, why not? What if he's at risk of being robbed by barbarians?
Yeah, or
What the fuck are you talking about? But back to the economy part, they're just kind of blind to reality. Third world immigrants from third world countries, they bring third world voting habits and cultures. They vote for big government. They vote for the welfare.
Voting? Whoops-a-daisies, we are not for voting.
Yeah, absolutely. And like he seems to understand the problems that emerge from the democratic process, but he's not attributing it to the democratic process. He's attributing it to not even the voters, but just other voters.
Yeah.
States. So by cheering for open borders to get cheaper labor for Amazon and Walmart, because it's all about GDP and the economy to them.
Again, I acknowledged this earlier, but that's obviously not an accurate representation of our motives. We're not interested in this topic because we're trying to staff our factories.
Yeah, I do believe that the as Murray Rothbard says, the fundamental starting point in law is the pro-GDP principle, I believe. And it's whatever promotes GDP, that's legal.
Yeah, we were big fans of Keynes in particular with his introduction of things like that.
What's that like? What's that old joke? Krugman and some other guy, they're walking along, and one of the guys he sees a pile of cow shit on the ground. And he says, "Hey, I'll give you $10,000 if you eat that cow shit." He's like, "Deal." Bernanke, that was it. Bernanke eats the cow shit, and they walk down a little further. Bernanke sees another pile of cow shit. He's like, "Hey, Krugman, I'll pay you $10,000 if you eat that pile of cow shit." He's like, "Deal." And then he eats the cow shit and he gives him the $10,000. And they walk on a little bit. It's like, we both ate cow shit, and none of us are any richer. And he says, "Well, you're missing the bigger picture. We just increased GDP by $20,000 and created 2 new jobs."
Just think of the velocity of the money in that situation.
And this is a joke that Austrian economists will tell to each other. Like, this is completely outside of what we are saying.
Well, I think it's definitely a really great way to introduce the economic calculation problem to somebody in a sense, because they gotta to help people appreciate that playing with numbers is not helpful to understanding production and value and the enhancement of human welfare.
Importing the very socialism that they claim to hate. They are selling out their grandchildren's future so that the GDP can go up by 0.5 percentage point.
So true.
So the logic underlying that statement is really interesting to me. So an immigrant moves to the country and votes on a socialist policy, and the libertarian is responsible for the emergence of socialism because they didn't aggress preemptively. And that's a really interesting sort of burden of proof to lay at our feet.
They prioritize the economy over the nation. But the economy is supposed to serve the family. The family is not supposed to be fuel for the economy. Now, I know a lot of libertarians are like, well, I don't support open borders. And that's fine if you don't. But they will also turn around in the same vein and say something like this. Well, the economy, you need to be more competitive than them. Well, you kind of can't. This is the reality of free market shit, by the way. A nation that cannot produce its own goods let's outsource everything to China. A nation that relies on Chinese slave labor for its steel and microchips, it's not a sovereign nation. I don't care if it's cheaper to buy plastic garbage from overseas.
That's an interesting perception of what establishes sovereignty.
And I do want to, if he doesn't care that it's cheaper to buy the plastic shit from overseas, okay, then don't. It's perfectly up to you if you only want to buy American. But you don't want to buy out of state because you want to protect the jobs in your own state. So you only buy within your own state. You probably want to protect your own family's jobs before the jobs of random people in your state. So only buy within your family. And it's like, well, protect your own job first, surely. So basically, don't trade. This is what the protectionist argument regresses into. It's nonsense, and fundamentally, I don't care that these people are nonsense mongers. So long as they just keep it to themselves, I'm fine with you adopting whatever nonsense standard you want for how far away somebody has to be from you before you're no longer willing to buy from them. Go for it, okay? Believe me out of it. You can buy all of the overpriced crap you want. Just don't force me to.
Can you help me a little bit here just understand what is this concept of sovereignty that you think he's appealing to, where he thinks that your sovereignty is undermined by having the ability to trade internationally?
Yeah, so it's basically this, for the state to be truly sovereign, it has to have walled off its citizens as basically like cattle that it can keep in its own little cage. And if you're allowing this trading beyond the borders, well, then that's no longer sovereignty, because we're losing on these exchanges, the exchange ratios or whatever, or however they describe it, trade deficits, right? It's like, oh, we're giving them all that money, and Rothbard talked about this at length. How Americans, they got. I was trying to quote Rothbard there. The Americans were getting all of these cheap Japanese cars, It's like, oh my god, we're sending all this money over to Japan. This is insane. We got to put the kibosh on this. But this is completely abhorrent to any person who understands the free market. Imagine, I like this analogy. I believe Kaplan came up with this. Imagine you had a big box right on the shore, and you had this this grain farm right next to it, and you were able to produce a whole lot of grain. You were very, very good at producing grain, and as it turns out, whenever you send this grain into this big box you got on the shore, it can just spit out whatever the hell you want. Magical box. It can give you a car. It can give you like it can give you new like iPhone. It can give you whatever you can imagine. You just put this grain into this big box, and it comes out with whatever the hell you want. And then one day, a storm blows in and blows the big box away. And as it turns out, it was just a harbor out of the box. And what you were doing was you were trading with people overseas. That's how you're getting it. That's the way to think about trade. It is a way to convert whatever is that you are best at producing into what you want most. Right? There's that line in Rami's song, I believe his name is Banana or something like that. It's we're talking about how we need to put tariffs on bananas. Where free trade is like a magic wand. It turns what you want best into what you want. Sorry, it turns what you make best into what you want. Right? That's what it is. So this notion of sovereignty, it's completely antithetical to anything any rational person should believe.
Yeah, I actually confess that I haven't heard that particular way of describing it. I think it's beautiful and poetic and economically valid as heck. All right, so let's continue.
If it means the Rust Belt is completely destroyed and American men die of opioid addiction and unemployment, it's not worth it. It doesn't matter if the market's better. I am an economic nationalist because I care about the well-being of the American people, not the stock portfolio.
Interesting. An ethical angle to take here, and really interesting contrasting with what you just said. So his interest in the well-being of the American people means, well, without a doubt, that we're deteriorating their quality of life in terms of the quality and quantity of ends that they can satisfy. But for him, it's clear that he's suggesting that that is a worthwhile trade-off because, and I think this is really the linchpin here, that improvement in the quality and quantity of ends that they can fulfill is necessarily packaged with some kind of harm. And two aspects of that are, is it true that that package is, well, is that alleged package an accurate description of reality? And the second is, would that justify legally or ethically interfering with the market?
Yeah, I mean, definitely not, right? It's because if you truly care about the well-being of the American people, like, okay, well, what does that entail? It entails that they are obtaining their ends. And again, the American people already decided that they want these foreign products. Guess what? If tomorrow all tariffs on Chinese motor vehicles were lifted, the American people would be fucking thrilled. They would buy so many Chinese electric cars because they're way cheaper and they have basically got feature parity with the American EVs. Right? The only real reason why Tesla's still in business is because of tariffs. For you to have this flourishing, you need to have the trade. You need to have freedom. Again, to whatever extent you have flourishing, you must have had freedom. You can't get flourishing without freedom.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting, again, I mentioned tribalism before, and sort of, especially in particular, class tribalism. And so there's this, the consumer who buys the Chinese EV is harming the American producer of EVs because of the having chosen to import rather than to buy domestically. And that really invokes a lot of really important questions about the nature of valid claims of harm, because isn't that the same as, if you have, I use this example all the time, if there's an Apple stall and then another stall opens up next to you, causes the prices to go down somewhat, are they harming you by introducing new supply into the market? And it's not only discriminating between Americans and Chinese in this case. Well, the Chinese firm is more important than the American firm. But what's a really interesting discrimination that's happening is that the consumer of the electric vehicle, as a citizen of the United States, is less important than the producer of the electric vehicle as a citizen of the United States. And that seems to be, regardless of the fact that the producers of electric vehicles in the United States must necessarily be a much smaller group than the consumers of electric vehicles in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Of whatever, right? So this blindness extends to the Second Amendment as well. I am a Second Amendment absolutist, but within the context of the
not with poisons.
Yeah, no, with poisons, he's not.
Constitution. That's the difference. We have to be honest about who the Constitution was written for. It says it is for ourselves and our posterity. It was written for European.
Well, they say that outside of the Constitution. They don't say that within the Constitution, do they? Like, where in the Constitution does it say, this is a document for Europeans? Like, I'm not a constitutional scholar. Maybe I'll have to eat crow on this one. But I believe that's commentary from the writers of from some writers of the Constitution talking about the Constitution. That's not included within the Constitution, though. Well, how's it was the Bill of Rights, I believe.
Men and women of that time.
Hold on. Let's see a transcription. Bill of Rights. No, I can't remember the document. It's like, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created, are endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights. Right? That's the actual relevant legal text. What isn't relevant legal text is what somebody who was involved in the writing of it commented about it. Right? That's not part of the legal documents there. I think it was the Declaration of Independence. I can't remember. The US, they have so many documents, I can't keep track of them all.
I don't know that it would constitute a very substantial criticism, even if it were integrated into the Constitution, since, like you said earlier, that's not a document that we're particularly interested in promoting.
Yeah.
So,
who were Christians and of high moral character. Libertarians will advocate for gun rights for anyone. It's absolutely insane.
Well, the Constitution says that.
Sorry, you go.
The Constitution also advocates for gun rights for anyone. The Constitution does that.
Yeah. We accept, poisons, like but like for me, yeah. I've said this perhaps too many times now, but there's a sleight of hand that happens where we talk about the ethical and the legal back and forth in a way that's sort of bizarre to me, where it's wrong. It's not like. Perhaps I should. I'm trying to avoid ever replaying the video, so I'm going to have to sort of guess at what he said here. But it's not only absurd in terms of the wrong-headedness because of the economic outcomes, but he's suggesting that it's wrong-headed for ethical reasons to promote gun ownership in the same vein that he was saying that it was wrong-headed for us to, like with the other topics he's talking about with protectionism and stuff like that. What I'm interested in is right before this, he talked about the ethical aspect by saying this is for Christian people who have ethics, and without the population having access to sufficiently developed ethics, then the rules and the freedoms granted by the Constitution don't apply. And I think that this isn't a contradiction in what he's saying, but it's really interesting to me because our position as ANCAPs is the legal position that everyone should be afforded the same property rights, essentially. Right? That's I think an agreeable basis to start from for both you and I. And so his superior ethical framework within which freedom is permissible is being somebody who promotes the violation of or the degradation of freedom. And so I don't know if I want to go as far as to say that that's a contradiction in terms of his position, maybe in like an absolute logical sense. But do you agree with me that there's a sort of Ouroboros there, where he's got like a self, like a like the snake eating its own tail, chasing the ethical roots of his own position?
Yeah, because it's basically saying that, yeah, exactly as you said, for you to have freedom, you need to not have freedom. You need to limit freedom, but there is no sense in which you have limited freedom as a principle, because to whatever degree it's being limited, then it's not free. You're not free if you're being limited in the activities you can engage in. Right? If I'm not allowed to trade with a Chinese person for their electric vehicle, then I'm not free. Right? That's not limited freedom. That is a lack of freedom.
Right, and not only like descriptively in the way that you're covering it there, but just for me, really, the people who deserve freedom are exclusively the people who advocate for the diminishing of freedom, right? Like, because he's saying the only people who can handle freedom are those with the moral fabric that he's prescribing, and that moral fabric is, in his words, the presence of mind to recognize that freedom is something that ought to be limited and constrained and essentially, I think, destroyed is how you and I would see it.
And like, specifically also, because he talks about, like, drugs at some point in this video as well. Like, it's only the people who are constituted such in their moral beliefs that they would never take these hard drugs. They are free to take those drugs. And the second they take those drugs, they're not free to take those drugs anymore because they don't have the moral constitution right. But it's like, okay, well, then those people aren't free at all, right? It's as if you're like, oh no, people are free to do whatever the hell they want, so long as they have the positions that they only do the things that I want them to do. They're free to do whatever the hell they want, unless they fall outside of that set. Like, okay, well, then they're not actually free, right? Because they're not free to make those decisions.
Yeah, exactly. It's got to be some kind of conglomeration of like the no true Scotsman fallacy and perhaps some others where like the self-fulfilling prophecy sort of fallacy. So here, I'll continue playing. Maybe he's going to move into something a little bit more sophisticated.
They'll fight for the right of a communist to own a rifle.
I mean, probably. I guess maybe Hoppe might, be the person who's the closest to objecting to that. But even in that case, I think we're probably all still in agreement about that.
Well, I will say, to kind of assuage some of his concerns, there is a very famous video where it's basically is showing screenshots of this Twitter thread where it's somebody asks, like, hey, some commies like, hey, a fascist trained with his rifle today. Why don't you own any firearms? And it's like every reply is saying, I'd probably just use it to hurt myself. And it's like, okay, to assuage your concern, it's okay. As it turns out, these guys are not particularly threatening or impressive people.
Certainly. And I mean, let's say we give them the benefit of the doubt even further, and, well, communists have seized power in the past, so perhaps our contemporary communists are sort of weak, but let's say that changes. It's empirically possible. If what you're suggesting about our position is something like this, if we're trying to advocate for defending freedom by diminishing freedom, then that would put us in a situation where we're contradicting ourselves. So I don't think that the solution for the possibility of adversaries coming into possession of armaments is, well, we might as well just give up on all of our principles then and adopt a different position altogether, which is essentially what his prescription for us is.
Yeah, and moreover, if the communists were in a position to take power and, make, a new socialist republic or whatever, if they had that ability, there's not a gun law on planet Earth that would stop them from doing that. Right? It's not as if the government could just say, any government which has faced revolt, they can't just say, actually, guys, it's illegal to kill the monarch. And they're, oh, shit, we didn't realize. And then they just go home or what. Like, no, they're going to get those guns, all right? And they'll take power. That's how it works. If they have the necessary support to do that, it's going to happen. And zero system on planet Earth has any way of preventing that. If 99.9% of people on Earth want communism, there will be communism that night. Okay, that's just going to happen, and nobody can prevent that. Not a single person ever. No ideology could ever prevent that from happening.
I suppose that it's an appropriate time to say that promoting an ideology that is far less potent in arguing against communism is spreading a more realistic harm than being concerned about the communist uprising that he seems to be worried about.
Absolutely.
Since you say all the time, right? It's the philosophy of the day that's really ultimately determining these things. That's where his bad ideas are really germinating. And this sort of armed revolt possibility, I think, is a far less pertinent issue.
Because the armed revolt, of course, could only ever come about from the ideas spreading far enough. And Jimmy, I got some bad news for you. You're not standing in the way of any decent communist arguments. You're just not.
Fight for the right of a violent revolutionary to arm himself. Dude, that's suicidal. It is too lawless. And then they'll be like, "Oh, you're a redcoat. You're a bootlicker." Like, if a group of people like communists or Islamists or leftist Antifa fucking dirtbags openly state that they want to destroy the Constitution and overthrow the nation, extending the constitutional protections to these insane people is a death wish.
Hold on.
Get fucking real.
So he's afraid of these people who are openly stating they want to destroy the Constitution. Again, I just got to really quickly check on something. I believe it's called the Second Amendment. Here it is. The Second Amendment to the United States Constitution. Let's just scroll on down to the text. It does state, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Okay, so what our friend Jimmy here wants to do is destroy at least this part of the Constitution, because he wants the state to infringe the right of the people to keep and bear arms. So Jimmy, on his own premises, should be prevented from owning firearms. He should be granted no constitutional protections because he wants to destroy the Constitution. So, on Jimmy's premises, he is in the exact same category of these people.
I couldn't have said it better myself, and I agree completely. I think there's two really tempting sort of mind worms. And then what I mean by mind worm is sort of like a earworm, these sort of ideas that just people get really attached to them. And I think there's two competing here, which is this idea of, on our case, defending a principle by refuting the principle as a contradiction. And to him, I think his sort of parallel to this is a principle that makes it possible for somebody who's against the principle to oppose it is necessarily wrong. And I think that ours is logically a bit more sound than his concern.
Mm-hmm.
They would rather the country burn down than be told, "Well, you're a hypocrite." Get real.
What?
The Constitution is not a magic spell. It is not a suicide pact.
Okay, but we're not constitutionalists. I don't care if the Constitution isn't a magic spell. Who cares? Okay.
Yeah, it must be the case that the libertarians from ancient history that he was speaking with were actually constitutionalists, because he's brought up more Constitution arguments than any other particular ideological position.
He's not said the term non-aggression principle one time in this entire video. Maybe I blanked out during that part. I recall 0 instances In fact, I've got the video up over here. I can just go do a quick search of the old transcript. And let's just see if the word aggression pops up in there. No, it does not, in fact. People in the comments are talking about the non-aggression principle.
I think that's a really good observation, actually, and I think that's a really telling indication that he's not doing a very good job of addressing the actual position he's named as what is the purpose of his critique is. So that's a very good point.
And I will say, like, even fucking Destiny, who admits himself that he isn't well read on philosophy at all. I watched a reaction he did of Dave Smith's debate with Andrew Wilson, and he was saying, like, well, isn't libertarianism all about the non-aggression principle? So he knows that. He's recognized that. This is not like some esoteric, like, crazy fucking deep ball knowledge or anything. This is like day one shit.
This might be day one of having interacted with libertarianism for Jimmy Talks. I'm going to be honest.
Well, no, because he already interacted with those ancient libertarians who he can't name and he doesn't know anything about. But he just vaguely remembered that they wanted state-funded drug rehabilitation centers or whatever.
My best guess, and I'm being unfortunately sincere about this, is I want to believe differently, but I can't help but to think that he introduced that story about those libertarians from so long ago to just sort of put some substance behind his daydreaming thoughts that occurred to him after watching that Andrew Wilson video that you mentioned that he was taking inspiration from.
George Washington would look at a communist Muslim running amok in America in 2026, and he'd be like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah, I think he might not know what it was. I think that's fair.
You know, he wouldn't say, well, he has a natural right to bear arms just like me. He would see an enemy combatant, actually. But our country has changed significantly since the 1700s. It has gotten too big, it's gotten too diverse, and it's gotten too divided as well.
I will say this is sort of almost a Heraclitean argument, where it's like, oh, well, that was back then. Now is today. We need principles for today. This is specifically a Heraclitean argument because Heraclitus, he was the guy who said you could never step into the same river twice because it's different every time, right? So things are constantly in flux. Things are constantly changing. So if something was true so long ago, and you get this like kind of notion all the time, it's like, oh, sure, but that was so long ago that they said that. Well, that doesn't mean that is it true? Like, it doesn't mean that it's false. It being old doesn't mean that it's false, right?
Oh, for sure. And, you know, I hate to pick on the Christians, but it reminds me really strongly as well of when you might mention something from the Old Testament that was morally objectionable. And they say, well, that was because, you know, it was really cool of God to, you know, kill those people or whatever, because they had a different moral system back then because of the societal status that they were in at the time that those things were committed. And I think it silly invokes the same kind of, I don't want to say, the first thing that comes to mind to me was coping. I wanted to have something a little bit more generous to use to describe it, but that's how it sounds.
And even, you know, he's not even going that far back here. He's saying like, well, you know, back in 1776, that was a completely different world. We need totally new rules now. I don't know, you know, if you guys are like real history buffs or anything. As it turns out, this guy, Jesus of Nazareth, he was around quite a long time before 1776. As it turns out, about 1776 years before 1776 is when he was around. So wasn't that a very different world? Like, do those rules still apply now? Like, it's a different world now, Jimmy. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I think that's a better way of phrasing it for sure.
Constitution through the lens of survival. If the government deems you an enemy, they will take your guns. That is true. Libertarians aren't wrong about the danger of the state, but the root cause is not explicitly state power. The root cause is who wields the state power.
Well, I mean, you got to hand it to him. as long as the president is a literal angel descended from heaven, we'd be good.
Yeah, we'll be just fine. And then, you know, like this is the thing with what does his ideal like angelic state actually look like? If okay, let's say Rothbard was wrong in identifying that the essential characteristic of why all these things are problematic is because it's being done by state. What specific anything could the state do without it being problematic? Like, what is wrong with the non-aggression principle? Like, it just say the words, Jimmy, please. In the outro, just stop your sentence stop mid-sentence, just turn to the camera and just say non-aggression principle, and at least don't be happy that you've acknowledged that this is our claim, because now you need to contend with the non-aggression principle and say like, well, no, the non-aggression principle is false, and here is the true principle here's the true standard for how you could run a moral state. Like, just what is that standard? How does it differ from the non-aggression principle? Please just, even if you don't do that, just stop at the end of the video and just say the words non-aggression principle, and then the video fades out, and then at least I can rest happy knowing that you at least are aware that it is a thing.
Yeah, well, I think you might be going hungry on that one, Zulu. But it's interesting to me as well to point out, just since I mentioned the angelic president hypothetical, I think it's worth noting that the power of the a priori reasoning that we're employing in our worldview is such that the angel being the president, if the government continues to operate such that taxes are being levied, then that is an effective critique of the angel on ethical grounds, whereas in the inverse, taxes, we understand them essentially to be, well, I guess what I'm trying to say here is that the government's status of being that institution that levies the compulsory seizure of property, we have an inalienable, like the president being an angel does not establish that the taxes that they're levying are more just than before the angel became the president. Mm-hmm. Like that observation fails to make taxation any more ethical, whereas the understanding of taxes alone is a sufficient grounds to critique the ethics of the angel. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Also, how much longer do we have in the video? Because I need to know if I should go take a piss now or wait until the end.
Sure. I suppose it depends on... we've been giving it a very thorough treatment. We're at 15 minutes now, and the video runs for 22 minutes.
All right, so I think we should... let's take a quick intermission here. I'll go take a piss. We'll reconvene short time.
Sure, absolutely. I'll try to pass the time by reading a few comments, and if the time difference is too much, then I'll join you in taking a brief hiatus.
Sure, I'll see you in a bit.
Absolutely. All right, chat. Well, I have to say, you guys are talking up a storm, and it looks like you've got quite a conversation of your own going on already, so I don't think it would be responsible for me to jump in and give my thoughts without having read the whole conversation. It sounds like maybe there are some people in the chat who are critical of the ANCAP position, which I really appreciate, because I have to be honest, I hate seeing an echo chamber. I'm scrolling up here hoping to find some of those comments. Somebody might have to remind me. Well, I'll answer that question. In order of importance, my favorite color is gold and black. If I really have to choose one, black, because black goes with everything. It's far more utility in that color. What are the libertarians going to do about the brown hordes? Well, I said earlier in the video, and I think that this will be a good opportunity to re-explore that. I think the libertarian position is the most effective anti-immigration position, even with unflinching adherence to the non-aggression principle. The mere removal of welfare, for example, and other kinds of subsidies that immigrants are currently enjoying would instantly disrupt the incentive structure so significantly that I think the problem would essentially resolve itself more thoroughly than any other way of addressing it could. I appreciate the guesses that it was purple. Purple is a very regal color. I would accept being seen as a person who appreciates purple. So I won't. I think that's a fine guess. Okay, the people saying I'm a utilitarian, you ruined it. Now I don't like that anymore. How do you guys don't believe in IP, but believe in privacy, which is the same type of ownership? Well, I'm not sure exactly what you mean by believe in privacy. Like, for example, if I'm in my house and I'm not wearing any clothes and somebody takes a photo of me through my window from the street, I don't know that that's something that constitutes an aggression. So if that's what you mean by privacy, I don't know if you can pin me with that one. But even still, I'm not 100% convinced at face value that that constitutes the same kind of ownership as IP. I suppose I see some similarities there at face value. That's definitely not an attack angle that I've had to deal with before. Yeah, I suppose maybe I shouldn't take him seriously.
Good deal.
Hello, sir. How are you?
Pretty good.
I'm good. I was able to answer one question of critical importance, which was my favorite color, and I screwed it up. All right, I'm ready to resume if you are.
Purple. No, I mean blue.
Damn, those are the exact two colors. Were you behind this? All right, ready for me to resume?
Yes, sir.
Pretending that a 2026 communist is a fellow citizen, like the Constitution from the 1700s said. They are subversive. And in any sane society, the Communist Control Act would have been enforced 20 years ago already. In a perfect world, these people would be kicked out of the country because they hate America anyways.
I think maybe I'm going a bridge too far here, but I'll risk it anyway. The grounds that this person is using to establish that the communist is a subversive element and ought to be treated as a hostile element in the state, it's surprising to me. I mean, I know this wouldn't convince him, and I don't want anyone to think that I think he would ever be able to see it this way. But what he advocates for is in the same category of property rights violations as what the communists are trying to bring about. So it is kind of bizarre to me to hear that level of vitriol and fear that he's directing towards the hypothetical communist, but he himself is advocating for, I think it's fair to say, comparable relationships between the state and private property.
Yeah, I mean, as we've gone over, he wants freedom insofar as everybody acts in line with exactly what the state says. I mean, hello, Joseph Stalin.
You can't build a free society with people who want to enslave you with their destructive ideology. But libertarians don't get.
You want to enslave us with your destructive ideology. That's you.
Yes, but remember, slavery is justified whenever there is a worse slavery that could have happened if not for that slavery.
So true.
And so we're just grateful to be enslaved by the property rights protecting property rights violators.
Get this. They operate on this suicide pact logic where they would rather let the country be conquered by subversives than violate the principle of free speech for enemies of the state.
In case there's anyone who's wondering, and since our audience is mostly ANCAPs, I assume there isn't, but we are all of the advocacy that Zulu's put all this effort into, and myself and so many others, I mean, what is the principal thing we want to bring about? We're trying to bring about the emergence of a voluntary society. So I think, in case anyone here is not one of us, so to speak, don't listen to Jimmy Talks when he thinks that we have absolutely no interest in whether or not we're moving in that direction. So as he's accusing us of sort of just being indifferent to the emergence of an involuntary society, all of the effort that we're implementing is towards the opposite of that. So I really don't think I can abide him characterizing us as indifferent to that.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, like, or else why the fuck would we bother?
Exactly. And I think, I mean, you see somebody building a bridge, and then you pull out your cell phone and you start streaming on TikTok and be like, chat, I just identified the person who least cares about bridges. This guy just totally indifferent to bridge breaking behavior. I don't understand it. Like, how can you encounter the libertarians and come away with the impression that they are indifferent to slavery and domination? But I digress. Maybe he's about to justify that.
I will say that would be a very funny bit. It's like, hey, chat, look at this guy. He hates bridges.
Next time I see a bridge getting built, I'm doing it. That's my debut on TikTok, I promise.
But ultimately, and I mentioned this earlier, this brings us to the core philosophical failure of libertarianism.
Here we go. Okay, finally.
It's the
We're about to get into the philosophy of libertarianism. It took us, 15, 16 minutes, but we're getting there now. Let's see it.
I am ready for our sharing of this cognito hazard to inadvertently bring about the deconversion of all the ANCAPs in the audience. Because this is, as he says, it's a core issue at the fundamentals. So let's see.
Action of hierarchy and the embrace of neutrality. They think everything is neutral. Libertarians claim the government.
We don't reject hierarchy. What are you talking about? Did you talk to ANCOMs? Okay, maybe he talked to ANCOMs. And that's why he thought we're like all for like drug injection sites or whatever, because they're like communists. We're not ANCOMs, okay, guy? That's a different group of people.
Maybe that is the explanation. You know, I have to be honest, I cultivate a sort of veil of ignorance in my own mind where I just intentionally forget that ANCOMs are a thing. And maybe that slipped through.
Should be neutral. They will say stuff like live and let live. They say the state shouldn't promote Christianity, but it shouldn't promote atheism either.
That seems agreeable.
Yeah, because there shouldn't be a state.
I think there is such a thing as a moral vacuum. And let me tell you right now, there is no such thing as a moral vacuum.
I'm just going to say
if the state stops...
I'm just going to say I don't know what the fuck a moral vacuum means. So, maybe I'm like a day one libertarian or something. But I think I know a lot about libertarianism. I've never seen in any of the literature a claim that there is no such thing as a moral vacuum. The evidence of which is I've never fucking heard that goddamn term before. I don't know what that means. So that's not part of libertarianism.
No, I can help you with this one. It's a Hoover that can only apply suction to things that you own.
True.
Let's continue.
Supporting Christian values, it doesn't become neutral, it becomes hostile. When you remove God from the public square, you don't get a blank slate. You just get a new religion. You get wokeism. That's the left's religion.
I do want to say here that I think that this sort of chain of like premises or whatever you want to call it here has been somewhat like this is some disjointed reasoning that we're seeing here.
Yeah, it's as if the second where you don't have Christianity, suddenly, out of no, and then for no reason at all, wokeism comes about. No, this is a terrible philosophy of history. Like, then why wasn't wokeism the very first philosophy which arose? Why? Because there wasn't Christianity in the town square, so wokeism must have arose then, right? No, it has very specific causes, namely. It goes back through the Hegelians and Marxians. It goes back through Kant. Like, you can trace this through the history of philosophy, where they're getting their ideas from, how it was imported to the US. through primarily, I would think, the pragmatists, right? You can see how it gets there and where it comes from. It's not just the absence of Christianity. Like, that's a retarded philosophy of history. No serious philosopher of history believes that.
Absolutely. And I think that's a good opportunity for us as well. There was a super chat that came in for €5. I think that's €1. And he said that libertarians must take for ourselves the rhetorical territory of bringing order away from the authoritarian right. And I totally agree with that. And I think that also an appendage to that thought is that we need to take away the idea of order as having to be imposed top down. I think that's the real problem, is that its order is perceived as imposed top down, and the language that we use to discuss orderliness is not normally conducive with being something that emerges bottom up. And I think that those two things are related. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is the beauty of the idea of emergent order, right? That really, to whatever extent you're having this imposition on freedom, that's not true orderliness. It's almost like a fiat civilized behavior, right? Because you don't have true civilization there. You have fear and repression. That's not cooperation. That's not an actual ordered society. That is, children playing at order.
I think that, well put.
Get the pride flag flying over American embassies. It's no longer a Christian nation because we wanted to get rid of it so bad. You get drag queen story hour at public libraries. Libertarian.
Yeah, so we just need private libraries, and then we can trespass them.
Yeah.
Libertarians step aside and let this happen, though. They will say, well, it's a free country. If they want to read to kids in drag, that's their right. No, it isn't. That is degeneracy. That is a cultural conquest that is targeted at...
So he says that's not their right. So please, Mr. Jimmy, what is your theory of rights? Something you haven't said so far in this video. Can you please elaborate on your theory of rights? What is the grounding of it? What is the justification of it? What does it state, even? Like, you haven't said this. You've just been kind of pontificating, being like, no, we need... The Constitution only works if you have it for the white Christian. Is it just the Constitution? Is that your theory of rights, the Constitution? Because the Constitution doesn't say that that's not their right. That it's not in the Constitution, certainly.
I think as well, it must be the case that his theory of rights isn't like civil in origin, right? Because the drag queens are clearly... They have the right to do story hour at the library as it is. So rights must not come from the state, if in his worldview.
Mm. Yeah, so, I mean, it's a mystery, I guess.
Well, it's not natural law, and it's not civil law.
God's law, maybe? Like, then again, we get like an elaboration on what God's law is, specifically?
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. That's a good point. I think that's the winning candidate for where his rights theory is grounded.
At children. Libertarians are incapable of distinguishing between, air quote, liberty, which is the freedom to do good and to raise a family and to worship God. And
What?
That's not the way I would define liberty, per se.
He said, like, did he just say liberty, which is, quote, the freedom? Like, who's it? Did he say that? Like, or am I just completely, like, huh? I think he said, quote, liberty, which is like, where are you getting this definition from? Uh-huh.
But it is such a, like, in context, it's not surprising to hear that really bizarre definition, right? Because if you think about how free will is perceived in the theistic, so often by theists, is that it is that you have the free will to do as God prescribes and sets out for you to do. That is how they see it. And that's frequently how it's explained to me when I'm having discussions about that topic with theists. So I see a lot of that same line of thinking here. And I don't want anyone to think that I'm taking a shot at theists broadly here, rather just sharing an anecdote about how that often gets, there's a parallel there in the explanation.
Yeah, and I think also it ties in with the thing I was commenting on earlier, where these people, they all have freedom, of course, so long as they're not in the set of people who do things that I don't want them to do. Because he's defining their liberty. Liberty is the freedom to do X, Y, Z things that I like. Like, that is he's freezing the abstraction, basically. Right? He's baking in only the things that he wants you to do with liberty, and that's what liberty means. That's what freedom is. Like, it's very... You could imagine it like printed on the side of some ministry in 1984.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I suppose what we might say to offer a competing and superior way to think about this is that freedom is the condition in which you can do as you please with your property without constraint. And obviously, I think if we really wanted to massage that out, we could find an even superior phrasing. But his definition is something that's very much at odds with that, is that freedom is the capacity to do what you will within constraint.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's almost like the Hegelian inversion of freedom and slavery, which is ironic because, again, he was saying that we were being useful idiots for Marxists and leftists earlier. He's being a useful idiot for Hegel right now. Hegel would define freedom as being basically free to follow whatever the collective will is for you to do. And slavery is being wrapped up in bondage to your own selfish whims. So freedom means total submission to the state, and slavery means being able to do what you want. Right? That's the Hegelian inversion, and he's doing the same thing here.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect comparison to draw as well, and I think it definitely shows that going into this kind of topic without having a proper grounding in what you're going to discuss makes it pretty easy for the useful idiots accusation to come around and hit you from behind.
Yeah.
Do you care to stop for a super chat right quick?
Yeah, sure. And by the way, to the other super chatters, I'll read like all the super chats at the end, which I haven't gone over already. I just don't want to keep stopping the video for super chats, and I'll read the coffee donations as well.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll try to avoid that as well, just to make sure we get to the end of this video. A common compromise, in quotes, among traditionalist theists is that there is a dichotomy between positive liberty from vice and to do good, and negative liberty to do whatever so long as you don't bother anyone. What do you think about that?
Let me try and parse that. So, a dichotomy between the positive liberty from vice, so like being free from vice, and to do good, and the negative liberty to do whatever you want so long as you don't bother anyone. Yeah, I mean, I suppose... sure, if they want to have that terminology, but it doesn't really, not legally rigorous at all.
It strikes me, the reason it caught my attention is because it seems like it's a really different use of those words than I'm used to, because for me, positive liberty is just liberty to, and negative liberty is liberty from. And I'm not thinking about that. Like, I'm sure that that's a common way of thinking about those things here. But in this case, he's saying negative liberty is the liberty to do, and positive liberty is the liberty you get from vice, which I assume he means vices being inflicted upon you in some capacity. And also to do good. So yeah, I find that to be a little bizarre.
I was reading as you're liberated from your own vices.
Yeah, perhaps that's the case. Perhaps that's the case. In even still, that would put us such that positive was freedom from and negative was freedom to. But I don't want to get too sidetracked. That just caught my eye right quick, and I thought, what the heck? It's a super chat. All right, let's carry on.
And air quote license, which is the freedom to do evil and to degrade yourself and to corrupt your community. They mix these terms together, liberty and license. Society needs direction. It needs hierarchy. It needs order.
You don't get in a market, I suppose, he thinks.
Society needs direction. You need some director for society. And apparently this guy understands Mises' argument of the economic calculation problem. Apparently he's aware of it. Apparently not. Right? Apparently not. If he thinks society needs direction, needs a director to decide what society does, runs flat in the face of Mises.
I suppose that it's fair to say that a market economy could be described as having direction insofar as each individual, as an end in and of themselves, is in the process of directing themselves and their property. So I don't know that there's necessarily, for him being concerned with that, it's like if he wants to get into a centralized direction being superior, I think that's actually a separate topic, because it sounds like he's suggesting that the market economy has no direction whatsoever. And that's probably why he thinks it has no order and all those other attributes that he said it's lacking, because he doesn't understand, it seems, that an individual acting as they do is directing themselves perfectly, completely, and wholesomely, even if he doesn't get to attribute some director to be like the super director of activities. Because he maybe, you see this a lot. This is perhaps too anecdotal, but like I see a lot of, I'm in a lot of communist discords right now, and they spend a lot of time on like Hearts of Iron and stuff like that. And that's not a criticism of them, but you can sort of see this direct, I don't want to say influence, but it's not a surprising coincidence that they're doing this thing where they're in complete control. And maybe when I see this, it's just that self-direction is just not satisfying to him in some sense. Does that sort of intuition that I'm having make sense?
Yeah.
As a Christian and an American nationalist, I stand by the American virtues, and I love liberty. It is what makes this country beautiful. But liberty without morality leads to the financial and the moral decay that we are all living through right now.
Why can't you just have, why is it impossible to have a moral society whilst having actual liberty, though? Can those two things not coexist? To have a free society where people are moral, is that impossible to occur? Well, I'll tell you this much. It's not possible to have civilization to whatever extent you don't have freedom.
Sure. Absolutely. And I think even if we play the devil's advocate again there a little bit and say, he's just trying to argue that the current society isn't a moral one, which is why freedom can't apply now, it wouldn't address the core concern that we have, that to the extent that you are institutionalizing things like theft, that is the extent to which you are ensuring and proliferating a non-moral society.
Look around you. Politicians are selling out to corporate lobbying in APAC.
And just want to give them a gold star for a libertarian talking point.
That's gross. That's degenerate. That is betraying your own people for 30 pieces of silver. Sound familiar? Anyone read the Bible here before? The rise of OnlyFans? That is degenerate.
I don't know what 30 pieces... I've never heard of that one before. I'm stupid. I don't know. Like, what the fuck? Yeah, fucking everybody knows. God, do you guys... This is a real deep cut, guys. They're selling out for 30 pieces of silver. I don't know if you guys are aware of that one. It's called the Bible. Ever read it? Like, this is not some, like, deep cut story. This is the fucking story of Judas. Everybody knows that, bro.
That was a significant bullet that we dodged there, because if we weren't familiar with that story, that would explain our moral shortcomings, since we're not adequately engrossed in the Christian moral code.
It's like, oh, it's the free market, buddy. Just let them do what they want. No, actually, I don't think we should just let them do that. It's the commodification.
I think what we're looking for here is the explanation for why, though. I don't understand how many people in the comments can be satisfied by the argument of, haha, no.
Of intimacy and something that's very inherent to the soul. It's like, nope, they'll just sell your butthole for $5 online every month. There's stuff like hoflation, degeneracy. Rabid feminism destroying the family,
What is it?
degeneracy.
He's just saying all the things he doesn't like in one. Like, okay, what is the connection of any of these things? Like, what is the central theme running through each of these individual points? Like, how are you tying these different things together? This is just completely disconnected thoughts. Like, I feel like I'm reading somebody's Twitter feed at the moment.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's disjointed is the most generous way to sort of describe where he's at now, I think.
OnlyFans.
All of this happened because
feminists or degeneracy. The Islam, degeneracy. Okay, buddy. What is the connection to your core thesis? What is your thesis?
I think his thesis is that he's very upset that someone sold their butthole on OnlyFans, to quote him directly.
For 30 grams of silver or whatever. If you guys don't know about that one, I'm just making a reference to the Bible if you guys aren't aware.
Philistines. I really want to hear, like you said earlier, I want to get to the point where he's going to offer us the framework for discriminating between just and unjust and all these kinds of things. He certainly implied he's going to get into that type of topic, since he was saying he's getting to the core philosophical issue in libertarianism. I didn't think OnlyFans was going to make an appearance in the core philosophical shortcoming of libertarianism, but I think I need to be open-minded about that.
Brought into the lie that there is no objective, air quote, good. We bought into the lie that everything is just a market choice. Libertarians look at a traditional family and a porn star, and they're like, oh, these are two valid lifestyle choices.
I mean, I guess so.
These are both the same. I see the bedrock of civilization and the cancer that kills it, actually. Society needs truth, and it needs to acknowledge that some things are true and some things are false. Some ways of living are healthy and some are toxic. We need to return to traditionalism. We need to acknowledge that men and women are different, and that the family is the building block of the nation, and that the nation answers to God only. But
I don't know about that one. I don't want to I want to share a hot take, but I didn't find that very convincing. If we're going to be talking about a legal system here that's based on answering to God, well, I hope my phone rings soon, because I feel a little bit without guidance on that one.
libertarians deny natural hierarchy. They are egalitarians in denial.
What?
They think if you remove the
Your thoughts on egalitarianism?
I'm not an egalitarian. And nowhere in libertarian theory does it state that there is no such thing as natural hierarchy. Again, we're not ANCOMs, guy. Like, if this video was titled "Why I'm Not an Anarcho-Communist," okay, we won't even respond to that thing. Go ahead, go off, King. That's not what the video is called. The video is called "Why I'm Not a Libertarian." Libertarianism says nothing about that there is no natural hierarchy. This is you're outside of the topic here.
Yeah, sorry to say, Jimmy, you heard it here first. I think you literally are hearing it for the first time here. Nope, that's a big no on the egalitarianism.
government, everyone will magically get along and they will all trade peacefully.
Nope, I don't think everybody will magically get along. To the extent that they get along and interact peaceably and follow the non-aggression principle, there will be more flourishing than otherwise.
Couldn't have said it better myself. I think that is the perfect clarification on that point.
They ignore reality. People are different. IQ distributions are different. cultural temperaments are different, and a society requires authority. Someone has.
That last one just slipped right in there.
Yeah, he keeps trying to like slip these little interesting little tidbits through. But I actually think it requires a demonstration that society requires authority, i.e., legal authoritarianism. Authoritarianism anywhere else, taken as just completely false. Epistemic authoritarianism. This guy said so, therefore. Everybody understands why that's false, but then suddenly when it comes to law, this guy said so, therefore we got to do this. Everybody's like, oh, okay, yeah, sure. That society requires that.
Has to be in charge. It doesn't matter if it's a group of one and one other guy, or if it's 10 people, or 100, or 1,000, 1,000,000. It doesn't matter. Someone has to be in charge. Leadership's important. And if the leadership is not a righteous Christian hierarchy, it will be a demonic globalist hierarchy.
Okay, that's another slippery one in there. I wasn't expecting, honestly, maybe I forgot it because I did watch this video to its completion. I forgot that we were demonic.
Yeah, I do want to know if Rome, prior to Christianity, was a demonic globalist hierarchy. Was, Edo period Japan, was that a demonic globalist hierarchy? I don't see how that's the case.
And he's promoting hierarchy at least, so I don't know why that adjective gets in there as like a con, unless he just means it descriptively. But
yeah,
I mean he's okay with hierarchy, obviously. So,
or ran by somebody else. Cough, cough. You know who?
Wait. Oops. Are we gonna get demonetized?
Libertarians live in a fantasy world where power doesn't exist. I missed the classical.
Oh, okay, yeah. So the big thesis of libertarianism is that there's no such thing as power. So when it comes to people who might use their power to aggress against you, we're just like, we don't even have to think about the issue because there's no such thing as power. So we can just go along and do whatever the hell we want, and there's no issues at all. Like, clearly, for you to have a legal theory, you recognize that there's such a thing as power and that people can aggress against you. That's the basis of why you would even start talking about law in the first place.
Absolutely. Sorry, I was looking at the chat there, and there's a viewer. I'm trying to make sure they're serious, but they think we're misunderstanding what he's saying. So if you do think that we're missing something here, or we're misrepresenting something, please give the specifics of what we said and what was intended to be understood, and then maybe we can rectify that.
Libertarians, those kinds of guys I fuck with. At least their logic is coherent. Even if I disagree, at least they kind of make sense. These libertarians we have now are just like liberals because they're materialistic and they're egalitarian.
Yep.
I'm taking that gold star back, honestly.
That's pretty much it. That is why they are wolves in sheep's clothing. They side with liberals more than they do with us, because at the end of the day, they are both materialists. They both agree that tradition is an obstacle to progress.
Nope.
Well, I know that Hoppe doesn't. If I just reread Democracy of the God That Failed, and the most recent chapter that I was over was Hoppe explaining a very in-depth promotion of traditionalism, or he's actually talking about conservatism, but he makes it clear that that's, tradition is where he's trying to promote there. I think that's probably the same for Mr. Rothbard, who made some significant effort to form an alliance with the right, and in doing so talked about a lot of the commonalities between the two, conservatism. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, tradition is an obstacle to progress. I don't recall any part of the libertarian legal theory that says tradition is an obstacle to progress. I certainly don't see how you get that from the non-aggression principle. I don't see where the connection at all is. This is just outside of libertarianism.
Both agree that religion should be private and it should be weak. And they both agree that national borders are impediments to the global economy. Isn't it really funny how liberals are like that now? But anyways, the libertarian just clears the path for the leftist. That's why they're always fucking siding together. The libertarian destroys the old moral laws in the name of freedom, their idea of fucked up freedom. Then the left.
Their idea of fucked up freedom.
We, in our efforts to diminish the state fully and to be opposed to any and all taxation and social expenditure, are actually promoting the expansion of taxation and social expenditure.
Galazar, didn't you hear those libertarians? I don't know if you know about this, but they want there to be state-sponsored by taxes, safe injection sites. Like, because this guy, he talked to somebody a long time ago who said that, and he's included it in a video about libertarianism. So that must be what libertarianism is all about. Like, I don't know what your confusion is here.
Is that even like? Please set me straight here. Is that something that an ANCOM would promote? A state-sponsored safe injection site?
I certainly would not put it past them, honestly. Like, anarcho-communists are the most... I've actually got several screenshots of anarcho-communists saying some incredible things. If you'll just give me 2 seconds here to open up my... in my response to Tick, my second response to Tick, that is...
I'm excited.
Tick round 2. There we go into images. Yeah, I'm gonna just forward these into our DM so you can peruse them at your own
Certainly
at your own will.
At my own leisure. All right, I'll take some ibuprofen first. All right then.
Let me put these up on stream. So the first one is from Anarchist Propaganda, which is a very much ANCOM adjacent account, saying, "I don't want a tax cut. I want universal healthcare. I want free public education. I want a clean environment. I want safe drinking water. I want universal drug coverage. I want roads and bridges. I want public transit. Tax cuts won't do this. Share if you agree." The second one is from Left Hayekian, saying, "I actually do not believe there is any overlap or similarity between social anarchism and ANCAP. People give too much importance to abstract prescriptions like abolishing the state, forgetting that no anarchist or ANCAP can ever even agree what is a state. Anarchists believe blah, 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 blah. Capitalism enforces hierarchy. Anarchism is incompatible with capitalism. They're killing off the capitalist ball, so on and so forth. Like, these people are not for the abolition of the state. They, in any real sense. In the video, I call them anarcho-idiots, I believe.
Yeah, I suppose that the reason for this sort of disconnect is that we see anarcho-communism as an internal contradiction because of the way that communism implies the state, and anarchy is statelessness to us. I suppose they're using anarchy to mean hierarchy-lessness, and since that's not a problem in anarcho-capitalism, that's what the contradiction that they're perceiving. I guess there's some semantic route to coherency there if you really want to just let them define all the words that way.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, they're just losing that battle, and nobody takes them seriously at all.
Yeah, I agree with that. I like that they're around because they seem to be just a little bit worse off than we are in
they're like
public forums. So.
Court jesters, you know. It's fun. It's fun to have them around. Like, I think I saw this story somebody was sharing of like their sister is some like socialite, and she arranges these like big parties, and every party she has this guy who's a flat earther, and every single party is just surrounded by women who are constantly like asking questions and shit. And it's like, you know, it's good to have someone like that around, I guess.
I couldn't agree more. I wish we had more like that. I wish that the ANCOMs would come out from under whatever rocks they're hiding under and take some of the heat off of us for a few minutes.
Yeah.
Leftists will just march in right through the open door to impose tyranny. That's it. We don't need tyranny? More live in...
Doesn't he want tyranny? Like, what does he think tyranny actually refers to, if it's not what he's advocating for?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. It's like we want to move away from the current tyrannical state of affairs into a state of affairs that's absent of the tyranny, and he's worried that it's conceivable that tyranny will emerge again. But I don't think the possibility of bad happening undermines the righteousness of pursuing good. I mean, if I can really just drill down to the most fundamental, um, functional units of what he's trying to say there.
Yeah.
Live. We don't need more neutrality. We need a state that protects our borders and it punishes these disgusting vices and it rewards virtuous actions. And
Tyranny.
It puts the American family.
That's tyranny. A state which is looking at any vice and punishes it and rewards any virtue. That's the exact like narrow path approach I was saying, where you've got freedom so long as you don't step outside this narrow path. That's what tyranny means, enforcing like specific regimes of behavior on every single individual. That is pretty much a great definition of tyranny right there. Like, he wants tyranny, so why is it like, but the leftists will come in and they'll implement tyranny? Like, just be honest, bro. Just say they're trying to implement the wrong kind of tyranny. They don't say they're wanting tyranny as if you think that's you think that's a good thing, right? You just think it's the wrong kind of tyranny. Like, just be honest. It's okay, bro. It's okay, man. You're allowed to be honest. You're allowed to say, yes, I want tyranny. It's very refreshing, believe you me, to just say the things you believe. You don't have to pretend that you don't believe the things you believe. It's okay. You can just be honest and say that you want tyranny. Now, as a caveat, I would hope you'd be honest about what we advocate as well, but, baby steps, try and be honest about what you believe first, and then you can maybe start being honest about what we believe.
Yeah, I won't be holding my breath on that one. And I think it's really telling, like, to just illustrate the point you're making as clear as possible, is to look at what he thinks moral behavior is in the first place as a Christian nationalist. So when he says promotes moral behavior, like, that sentence may be innocuous at face value. I mean, not completely, since we're libertarians, but let's think of what he's like promoting. He wants the state to promote the identification of people who are creating moral hazards. So that would be people, like, for example, who participate in the use of drugs, prostitution, presumably, depending on how consistent he is, like loaning money with interest. And he wants the state to be directly involved in incentivizing and rewarding individuals for going out and either, I presume, performing some sort of vigilante justice, or if he's not a vigilante, then for ratting people out to the state or surveilling each other for the sake of the state, and victimizing those people who, under our worldview, it's pretty clear are not doing anything wrong.
Yeah, it's literally 1984, where it's like all the children are like reporting on their parents, like, the Hitler Youth Project. Like, that is exactly what that means. Like, how do you identify the vices? How do you identify the virtues in people? Well, the state isn't omniscient, of course. They're going to have to use some means to do that. What means? Well, they're going to have citizens reporting on each other.
Oh, for sure. And it's just astounding to me that he can, like, what possible differences are there between the communist 1984 that he's bemoaning here and the Christian nationalist set of circumstances that have essentially the exact same prescription as the communist one in terms of what daily life is going to look like. But one is apparently far more desirable than the other. And I find that to be sort of, I don't know, is it unfair to say that there's like a little bit of cognitive dissonance happening there?
Yeah, it certainly seems like it.
Above the global GDP. We need to return to the values that actually built this country, like faith and blood and soil and honor.
Ah, yes, values. Blood.
The values that built this country: faith and blood and soil and honor. he's like if you just took like some sort of large language model and just trained it on slogans of this type of person. It's just random jargon and slogans just mashed together without any connection to any underlying thesis at all. Faith and blood and soil and honor. and honor and power and Vikings and manliness and TikTok edits. It's like, okay, okay, bro.
Yeah, actually, but we've identified the magic soil he was talking about, because if you mix all these things in a cauldron, you get the magic soil that gives you American citizenship.
It's true. You need the blood and the magic soil.
Yeah, and you forgot honor.
Yeah, of course. You need to be honorable whilst doing it.
Anything less is just a slow death march. So, yeah, that's my problem with libertarianism. I'm sure somebody's going to disagree, and hey, that's fine. You may be
quickly do another little quick Google here. I might be completely off base. Yeah. So anything else is a slow death march, he says. A death march is a forced march of prisoners of war, other captives, or deportees, in which individuals are left to die along the way. Like, he wants this. Like, he's some manner of, like, white nationalist. Like, buddy, you want literal death marches. Like, that's what you're saying. You actually want these things to happen. Like, you don't get to use that. Like, this is a slow death march. When you want literal death marches, am I going nutso here or something?
No, you're right, and I find it it is a little bit, I don't want to be dramatic, but it's just a little bit frightening where the disparity between what's promoted and what's underlying it is so big, right? Because I think you're 100% hitting it right on the head. The state is the only institution that even has an interest in doing these things, let alone the capacity to do these things. All the great atrocities, like the death marches you're talking about, when have they come from? You know, like, from whence have they come relative to what you see individuals trading with each other doing? So he's in a situation here, and I'm trying to be very careful not to cross over again into psychoanalyzing in this, what I'm about to say here, but he's in a situation where he's advocating for the righteousness of the state of affairs that can emerge, from which is the only way that this, a death march can emerge. It's the only state of affairs in which there would even be an incentive to perpetrate such an atrocity. But at the same time, in his mind, it's occurred to him that the analogy that he wants to utilize to illustrate the atrociousness of the situation that we're promoting is this thing that's utterly absent in our prescription. It's completely, there's no capacity for that. There's no conceivable incentive for that. I mean, I am addicted to hypotheticals and metaphors. I just can't help myself. And I can't even fathom how I would make a metaphor that involves McDonald's having an incentive to do a death march. You know what I mean? Like, it would just be too tortured to even be coherent. That's how far away it is from us. I don't know. I think him choosing that particular metaphor, it just feels off to me. And I think I'm being clear on what I mean by that.
Yeah, it's not only does he use that metaphor, he uses it like, half a minute after saying how he wants blood and soil nationalism, and he says that half a minute after he says he's worried about the tyranny of the leftists. Like, this guy's all over the fucking place.
Absolutely. After and of course, since his moral prescriptions are so tribalistic in their character, it really isn't a stretch to remember what he was saying about incentivizing moral behavior as a Christian nationalist. So is incentivizing moral behavior ratting people out who will then be sent on a death march? Is that too much of a stretch, perhaps? I think perhaps it's a dramatic step, but I don't know that the logical components to get there aren't present.
Different, but that's the thing with libertarians and the idea. It's very individualistic. So someone may be like, well, I don't believe that, but I'm a libertarian. Again, that's what I think the problem is. They're not working together as a coherent unit, which you would have under Christianity anyways.
We doing libertarian strategy now?
Yeah, what?
That was I had a little whiplash there. I guess I can agree, though. It can be somewhat frustrating trying to get libertarians to coordinate with each other at this particular moment in time, but certainly that's not a intrinsic characteristic of libertarianism. I don't think so. In
And
fact, I think what's going to emerge over the next couple of years is that we're going to see that libertarianism is actually very conducive to the opposite.
yeah, and you know what? It's a fair enough criticism because as we've seen, the rest of the rightist coalition, they're like in lockstep. You know, Nick Fuentes, he's still a Trumper all the way. That didn't break down at all. You know, there wasn't a whole split with Elon Musk or Vivek Ramaswamy. There's no accusations from certain parts of the right that Palantir is engaged in any sort of business with Israel, who they hate, or from another part of the right that that Tucker Carlson is a fucking Putin asset, or or that Erica Kirk is covering up the death of Charlie Kirk, the real reasons behind it, or whatever. The rest of them are like they're a sole lockstep, really solid coalition there. It's just the libertarians that we don't get along with each other. This is absent elsewhere in the right.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So, yeah, I'll say that I'm a far right paleocon Christian nationalist. I don't know. I think I'm just the normal person now. I just follow the traditions that my ancestors and like pretty much the whole fucking world followed. Like, I want my country and my people to be the top dogs, but we live in a backwards world now. So, yeah. All right, guys, that's all from me today. God bless you and your families. I mean it when I say it. America first and America only. JimmyTalks out. What's up, guys? Welcome.
Why did he sounded like so like out of sorts at the end there? It's like, I don't know, guy. He like deflated right at the end there. He was like, so I need blood and soil and heroism and honor. And he's like, I don't know, guys. I guess I'm just a regular guy, and I just want I don't know. I just want my nation and my people. Like he's completely deflated in his last sentence there.
I also picked up on that, and I thought that I also enjoyed his description, his perception of the normal person when he said essentially, I'm just a normal person. I want what anyone wants: domination,
Yeah,
total domination based on your tribe. Yeah, well, I guess it's possible that you could argue that that's true for the normal person with the way things are going right now. But I would mean normal in the median sense, not normal in like the well-adjusted sense.
and like this is truly, they do think there is no alternative. It's just might makes right, and like guess what, buddy? You lost that fight. Okay, you lost it a long time ago. As it turns out, the leftists won out over you. So I guess they must have been right.
I think it would be tremendously productive for everybody involved if a dialogue with JimmyTalks was ever possible. I don't know that that's something that he'd be interested in, but I'd love to have the opportunity, even if to just listen in to somebody explain to him, hey, listen, you've been given some false ideas about what we are. Not to convert him, but a conversation like that I think is always productive. Mm-hmm. And I do want to say to everybody, when I originally brought this to Zulu, I said, oh, look, it's a video I thought was really interesting. It's 22 minutes. Probably won't take us more than an hour to get through it. So that's on me. A little bit off on that one. What are we at now? Holy shit. Well,
I'm at 3 hour and 28 minutes, but we also had that time of trying to get everything working.
True. Although that still counts. Well, I guess that's it then. I think that covers the entirety of the video. I do want to say, if I may, thanks so much for everybody joining us. I thought this was a lot of fun to go through, and I'm really glad that I had the opportunity here with Zulu to bring me on and sort of share my perspective on JimmyTalks' perspective.
Indeed. Well, I'll see you probably next Saturday for the next episode of Ask ANCAP.
Absolutely. And if I may just say so, if anyone's not aware, this is Ask ANCAP. We do, Zulu and I, a weekly call-in show every Saturday at 5 Atlantic time. And if you're not aware, you're heavily encouraged to bring your socialists or minarchist pals to come and call in. We just love to hear from them, and it's a great time. And Zulu, I hope we'll see you then.
Yeah, I'll see you then, and thank you very much for coming on. I'll talk soon.
My pleasure. Have a good night, everyone.
Peace. Somebody says maybe if you hadn't just called him a white nationalist. I mean, like, I'm not insulting him. Like, that's just, is that not just descriptive of his position? Like, he was literally saying we need like blood and soil and honor, and how like rights only apply to like white Christian people. Like, how is that? If that's not white nationalism, I don't know what is. Like, that's just a descriptive term. I'm glad you came to the conclusion of wanting to talk to him. I think neither of you is ready to convert conservatives. Debating is not the same. Yeah, I'm not interested in converting him. But anyway, let's go through these super chats. He called himself that, though, no? I mean, he certainly implied it. Up our chat. Funding. Alrighty. Did these ones. I think I did this one. Huge Chat Harold for $5. Watching when it came out, pretty low hanging fruit strokes inbound. Well, thank you very much, regardless. Vanguard, yeah, we were talking about Vanguard. Apparently, the currency is Israeli shekels, so thank you very much for the 30 schmeckles there. Then we've got Ogon Kulak for 1,000 huff. Thank you very much. Have you ever taken an epistemology 101 class, Jay Dyer? Anyway, love the content. Have some Hungarian funny money. Well, thank you very much. Or this guy was talking about it's Logic 101 that you don't want to, that you have to ban drugs. It's it's epistemology 101, guys. You have to ban drugs. Come on, guys. We've got Ariel David, 95 for $5. Thank you very much. To be fair, they said, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me," although they're quoting their God. Not sure what that's in reference to, but thank you very much. We've got a Libertarian Yippee for $10. Thank you very much. This video was so dumb that it inspired me to want to make a vid explaining libertarianism and the NEP, because I have a thorough grasp of both. On that note, any advice for a new ANCAP content creators? So, I would say the main thing is just to get out there and start making videos. Your first video is going to be shit. Doesn't matter. Your next video will probably be shit as well. Doesn't matter. As long as you keep getting less and less shit as time goes on, you're going in the right direction. What matters is, when you make that first video or two, do you get the bug? If you get the bug, it's like, okay, well, I'm really into this. I want to do this. This is really creatively fulfilling for me. I got that. Some other people I know got that. Then you're just on the right path. You're gonna keep making videos no matter what, right? So I would say, as far as advice goes, there are some channels I could direct you to on like YouTube strategy type things. I could give advice on like specific aspects, especially if I've got like a product in front of me, like what you could improve upon. Because it's hard to like just give advice in a vacuum, unless there's like some like concrete to advise upon. But yeah, I would say the main advice, if this is going to be your first video, just make it. Don't worry about anything. Just make it however the hell you want to make it. Put it out there. And then you can see, like, okay, do you enjoy it or not? That's the main thing, is just to make it. Don't worry about like, oh, will this intro get people to be interested? Oh, will this thumbnail get people interested to click? only do that insofar as you're interested in doing that. Just make the video that you want to make. For your first video, just make the video you want to make. Experiment. Go crazy. Go ham. It's a brand new channel. Like, you can experiment a little bit. Yeah, that would be my advice for you. Monarcho Hopian for $8 Australian. Thank you very much. Missed most of this stream. Looking forward to watching it back. Everyone remember to tune into a special episode of The Remnant in 48 hours, indeed. Because we had to miss the one on Friday or Saturday for Monhop. So we're doing it again on Tuesday or Wednesday morning for him. Pardon me. And we've got a Sick Vox for £5. I believe we already did this one. Yes, because Galzar believed that was a euro sign. I remember that. And Eli for $2. Thank you very much. And I did send you a friend request on the old Discord box. Can I see my sent requests? Because maybe because I've got a streamer mode on. I don't know. I don't know how to look at my sent requests. But I did send a friend request to that account. Yeah. And then there's the Lazy Fae for $20 US. Thank you very much. I believe this one was covered during the stream. And then there's Super Boy Boys for $10 Australian. Thank you very much. The sense in which Jimmy is right. Having the NEP is insufficient. If you don't produce resources... having the NEP is insufficient if you don't produce resources. But an NEP-ordered society could be very classically hierarchical depending on property arrangement. Yeah, definitely. The NEP is not like a magic spell where you just get all the goodies or anything. And then the Lazy Fae for $5 US. Thank you very much. You'd be surprised. I knew a guy who thought the nativity story was some obscure niche religious story when someone posted it in a Discord server. Where it's literally like every Christmas you'd like act it out in school or whatever. And it's like a real deep cut here. Did you guys know there was this guy called Jesus Christ and he was born in a manger? Did you guys hear about this one? It's crazy. And we've got Ariel David, 95 for $5 US. Thank you very much. Even when I didn't know much about libertarianism, I never had the impression that Hoppe supported monarchy, reading Democracy, the God That Failed. Yeah, which Jay Dyer, who hasn't read Democracy, the God That Failed, but pretends he has read it, he didn't pick up on that, of course. He just kind of read the title and said, haha, so he likes monarchy. I like this guy. Handle You Candle 1 for 100 rupees. Thank you very much. Love you guys. Keep going. Absolutely. Love you too, man. The Lazy Fae for $5 US. Thank you very much. Isn't Blood and Soil a German national thing, not an American one? Yeah, I mean, it's a phrase which comes from the Nazis. It's he's kind of adopting it, appropriating it, cultural appropriation here. And then we've got another $1 from Eli. Thank you very much. But yeah, thank you to everybody who actually there were Ko-fi donations. See here. What if I go to like my page, then I could be able to see if it's supposed to be public or not. Or not, I don't know. Well, it was from a couple from Zetetic. Yeah, so Zetetic, I believe those ones are supposed to be public. Sorry for messing up your setup. Be sure to figure out either Vencord Vesktop or SyncTube.de. SyncTube was one I was looking into as well, which I've used myself and is way better than Discord YouTube activity and better than just streaming it. Yeah. I had the old grok machine, look up a bunch of potential candidates. I was going to test them out, but I just never got around to it. So I'll do that at some point. I just want to see what best fits my requirements and, would be most suitable. And I mean, at the end of the day, I could just vibe code something potentially, if nothing meets my requirements properly. And then another from Zetetic. I'm reading the Ethics of Anarcho-Capitalism book that you recommended, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm kind of embarrassed to admit that pardon me. I'm kind of embarrassed to admit I learned a bit about conflict that I kind of knew, but wasn't super clear in my mind for some reason. Conflicts have a mental and physical component. Yeah, I mean, it is an incredible book. Like, it is absolutely probably the best start I could have gotten into anarcho-capitalism, was reading that book, because, like, it really set me on the right path. I could have just read some David Friedman book or something, but instead I got, like, Chris Bohr, who's very solid on the theory. He's a very solid jurist, and he, like, and it's also just a very enjoyable read. Like, you don't want to put that book down, and, like, it's so solid on the theory. Everybody should read that book, absolutely. And then one from Aliberk, who says, keep being based. Well, thank you very much. Yeah. Did I get any more? Whilst I was looking away. Nope. Video. Right. And yeah, Superboy Boys is also endorsing it. The Ethics of Anarcho-Capitalism. Yeah. Thank you very much, everybody who came along, especially to those who donated. I will see if the Jimmy gentleman is interested in some sort of a debate. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time.